computer. So, all right. And so everybody understands that we record all of our training sessions. So just by being here, you're giving us permission to record your image and voice. We post this on the St. Killian YouTube channel, and it stays there for years and years because lots of people like to come and watch these training sessions. And sometimes there's no other training available. So the Franchise Tax Board has some stuff, but we're one of the few places that just leaves it up there for everybody else to get at. And with all that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jerry Muir, and he can give you his introduction.
Okay, thank you, Sean. As Sean said, my name is Jerry Muir. I've been affiliated with St. Killian's Church in some form or fashion for a number of years. My primary work is at Coastline College as a site coordinator there. And then I also teach at a couple of colleges, accounting and federal and state tax law. All right, so let's see here. Let me see if I can unfreeze the screen and get through our PowerPoint here. Okay, so today is scheduled from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock. We will not go past 1 o'clock. Our objectives including welcoming and introducing key players in the program. We'll talk about some of the what's new, if you will, for tax year 2023. There's a lot of things that are new. And if you've been around the tax world any period of time, there are constant new laws, both federal and state. And we'll introduce you to a revenue ruling that, a revenue procedure that talks about what's new for federal tax law. And then we'll talk about ethics. You'll hear that term time and time again. We'll talk about screening taxpayers, interviewing taxpayers, and then what is called taxpayer management. And then we'll do an introduction to Link and Learn and TaxSlayer. If you've been in the VITA program, you know that Link and Learn is where you go to certify, and TaxSlayer Pro is the tax preparation software that we use at St. Killian's. There are other programs that use other types of software, but again, we use the TaxSlayer Pro. When you hear the term IRS Link and Learn, that's the same thing as a TaxSlayer Pro. That's a platform that's used. And then we'll talk about some filing basics and filing status. I'll give you a quick introduction to the Affordable Care Act. We'll talk about reporting income, and then we'll discuss individual taxpayer identification numbers and some miscellaneous topics. And then before we conclude our session today, we'll go through a tax return exercise. So you'll get the full Monty, as they say, this morning. Again, we'll go no later than 1 o'clock, and then we'll take breaks approximately on the hour for about 10 minutes. Okay, so this is from last year, and Sean Gahn, our site coordinator, has already mentioned a couple of changes. We've got Damien, who's going to be the IT guy, and then we're also going to bring in Robert Andrews. Robert Andrews worked for me last year at Coastline College, and so he's got some experience under his belt. But again, this is the laundry list, the cast of characters from last year. Susan Armstrong is in the front office there at St. Killian. Fred, I think actually Fred started the program, if I remember, a number of years ago. Sean, as he mentioned, he's going to be the site coordinator. He's got a lot of experience. Emily ITAC has worked for me at Coastline College as the ERO. When you hear the term ERO, that's the electronic return originator. That's the button pusher, if you will, the person who's going to e-file returns. And then, of course, not all returns are going to be accepted, so they have to be perfected. And Emily has some experience doing that. And then we've got some folks who've been with VITA and at St. Killian's for a number of years: Mel, Art, Steve, John. And then Evelyn last year. Evelyn, are you on the call this morning? I don't know if you're able to come off mute, but she was our drop-off team leader. When you hear the term drop-off, what that means is there's a couple of ways to do it. But typically what happens is the taxpayer will come in, they will drop off photocopies of their records, and they'll usually come back the next week and pick up their completed return. So Evelyn was doing that last year, and then she also was an ERO, an electronic return originator. Okay, so we're going to introduce you to the Link and Learn program straight away. And when you hear the term Link and Learn, it simply means an IRS product or program where we all go. And not only do we certify, meaning we take the test, because everybody has to certify in the program. It doesn't matter if you've been with the program for a couple years or you're brand new. Everybody certifies. And what that means is you start with a basic ethics test. You go to what is called an intake and interview test, and then you go to the various certifications. So we're going to talk about that shortly. This is important, and this is going to fall on most likely John Nagy, our training coordinator. When you do certify, there's material that you read, like any test that you take in college or high school. There's a lecture, there are tutorials, there's information that you read, and then once you read everything and you get ready to go, then you sit down and take the test. So the same thing with Link and Learn. You're going to read materials, you're going to practice, and then you're going to take the test. When you hear the term test or certification, that's really the same thing. And so again, we're gonna introduce you to this shortly. This is important. If you're brand new, you have to register to use the Link and Learn program. And you also have to register to use what is called the Practice Lab. That's the tax preparation software. And when you are registering, you are providing your information, your name, your address, all of your administrative information. And what happens is the IRS contractor will collect that data, provide it to the IRS, and you may get a survey, but you're not going to get a call from someone to sell you life insurance or shampoo. None of that, none of that. But again, register to use. So again, you're going to be providing your information. When you do take the certifications, again, there's a number of certifications. Most people will certify at the advanced level. You have 2 attempts to certify. If you are unsuccessful on that second attempt, then options include you work with John Nagy or someone else at the church, and you take the test with paper and pencil. That's one of the options. And this is the important thing. You'll hear me say this time and time again during the VITA training we're going to do for the next number of weeks. You have an opportunity before you take, or during the test, you have an opportunity to look up each and every answer. And we'll show you how to do that, some tricks of the trade. So that way, when you sit down and you take the certification or the exam, you're going to be successful. You have to get 80% to be successful. And so probably a quick Cold War story. Years ago, I met an enrolled agent. He'd been around for a long, long time. He had his own practice, and he attempted to certify to help out in the program. And he didn't look at any answers. He took his tests, or his test. He was unsuccessful, and then he went right back at it, took it again, and he was unsuccessful a second time. So again, you have the opportunity to look up the answers, because there's a lot of material, a lot of training material, tutorials, no shortage of material to look up the answers that you need to be successful. Okay, so before I jump into the Link and Learn program, do we have any questions? And Sean, I'm not sure if they can come off mute, or should I wait for questions at the very end?
Everybody's able to come off mute if they have a burning question, and I'll let you decide how time management's working. I'll just make a comment at this point. We already ordered our publications, and yesterday we received our 6744 books, which for those of you who use them, it's the study guide for taking that certification test. So we've got enough for all the St. Killian volunteers. We won't be giving them out to the partner sites this year. We only have about 50 copies.
Okay, and let me piggyback on that. When you hear the IRS form 6744, we're going to talk about that. That is an important document that helps you take the certification, take the test. Because what I do is when I read the materials, because I have to take the test too, my go-to document is at 6744. I use it. I answer all the questions. I look up the answers, reference the page numbers, typically in the publication 4012, and then I take the certification. But yeah, I'm open to any questions, especially from new volunteers.
Hey, Jerry, this is Steven. Good morning.
Hi,
I'm Sean.
Stephen.
Hey, I just want to clarify to everybody, especially to the new ones, because this is happening every year we have, is that they are a little bit confused which password to use for the Link and Learn program and the practice lab. I want to make sure that when you're doing this, you create your password, for example, or you log into IRS Links and Learn and Practice Lab, that you have to really write it down according to what it is, because it's always been confusing to a lot of volunteers. For example, when you sign up and they logged in and they said, I can't log in because they're using the wrong credential. So I just want to clarify that, make sure that when you do this, always make a note of what your credential is. Granted, you can reset it, but the problem is if you reset it, it's gonna ask you for like a lot of authentication. It send you a text or email, and there's confusion on that. So I just want to make sure that that's, keep that in mind for you guys, for the new ones. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, Stephen. These passwords are not state secrets, and so take a piece of paper and a pencil when you log in. Write down your username and your password, and you're good to go. Now, as far as the practice lab, again, you still have to register to use that, and you can see in large, bold font the password for the practice lab. That's Train Pro Web, and we'll talk about that also. Okay, any other questions or comments, especially from our new volunteers?
Hi, this is Daisy Santiago. I want to know how can I get the book. I want to make sure I have that book of 6744 IRS publication.
Oh, I think Sean mentioned that. I think, Sean, are they currently at the church?
Daisy, do you work with St. Killian Church?
No, I work with San Francisco Solano.
Then you would just talk to your site coordinator. They should order books for each site coordinator orders books for their site.
Okay, I'll talk to them then. Thank you so much.
Play out of right here. Can I get the emails of these links? I've got them hard copy written down just now in my notes, but in the chat, it's very hard for me to see them and not get distracted to click on that.
Are
Okay.
you
Okay,
talking about the URLs that are displayed on the PowerPoint screen?
Yeah, the ones we're looking at right now, they threw something in the chat and whoever it was responded. Yeah, I'll send them to you in the links.
What you can do is Sean Gahn can send out the PowerPoint presentations to you, and that way you'll have the whole thing.
Okay, great.
I will send the entire PowerPoint and it will have all the links.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Okay, anything else?
Hello, this is Ty Anderson, and I just have a quick question. So I unfortunately have work early in the morning from 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Saturdays, Sundays, and also Mondays. However, I am interested for sure of learning about this VITA program, and I do have like a little bit of downtime here and there to like brush up on some knowledge, and of course have outside time to still make sure I'm getting my training in and whatnot. But my question is that if I'm not mistaken, I did was reading upon one of the emails, and I was saying that like there might be a recording on YouTube about something like this. So in case I missed some of this information, I can go back to look at these videos. There's like a pre-recorded YouTube happening, or is like some recorded in the emails, or I just wanted to double check on that.
So let me answer that.
Sean,
one,
you want to tackle
Jerry.
that?
Yeah, Jerry, let me answer. So we record all these sessions. This is being recorded right now. When the session has ended, we will upload it to YouTube. We have to work with our partners at the church to get it done. So it can take a few hours. As soon as it's up, we will send the link to the video to everyone who was registered for training, whether they watched the session or not. And we'll keep it up there for a whole year. If you want to watch it on YouTube, you can pause it, start, stop whenever you want, rewind. You can run it at double speed if you think we talk too slow, whatever you want. So some people prefer the YouTube way of going through it.
In addition to that, this when Sean mentioned about YouTube, it's about St. Killian YouTube. We have on the St. Killian's website and our YouTube channel for St. Killian, all the previous trainings has been published in there. So in fact, if you go to St. Killian YouTube channel, you can actually go over and watch the previous years of our training videos. So that's, so there's two ways about it. If you already know where the St. Killian YouTube, if you already subscribed to St. Killian's, it's in there. And then as Sean said, he's probably gonna send the email to you guys, the link on it, just to make sure. But yeah, it's in there. gonna be in there.
Wonderful. I think I really, really appreciate both of you guys. Thank you. Thank you a lot.
Okay, anyone else? And Sean, it looks like we've got some messages in the chat. Did you want to check that?
I see that, and I'm working on answering them directly.
Okay, very good. All right, then if there's nothing else, I'm going to jump into the Link and Learn program. And I've got to do it this way. So let me stop sharing and open that up. And let's see here. Okay, so this is the IRS website. The IRS website has a lot of information on it, to include probably thousands of forms, documents, and publications. And so you will actually be utilizing the IRS website from time to time. You might bump into a question, you might bump into a form that you've never seen before, and the IRS website has all of that information. I'll be the first to admit the website itself is I will use the term, it's not user friendly, but you can dig and you can get information. Okay, so this is the Link and Learn program. And the Link and Learn program, the goal is it's going to be used by volunteers, so they can go ahead and read the materials that they need to read, watch some of the tutorials, and then certify or take the test for Link and Learn. And if you've not been associated with the VITA program, VITA is actually all over the United States, and there's also VITA sites overseas. The vast majority of the ones overseas are military. And you can see the various course descriptions. These are the levels of certification. And we will talk about the first level, and that's the Volunteer Standards of Conduct, the ethics exam, which is a short exam. And then we also have an intake and interview exam, which we're going to talk about. And then you jump into the various levels of certification. And I get this question just about every year. People ask me how long it takes. Well, it depends on how much you've read. In some cases, you might have a tax professional or someone who's been involved in the tax world in a big way. And so, for example, the basic examination for brand new preparers, brand new volunteers, if they've done the reading, it could take anywhere from maybe a couple hours to maybe 3 or 4 hours, something like that. If you're a tax professional, you can probably race through the basic examination in maybe 30 minutes. But the basic exam talks about what are called wage earners. And a lot of individuals on the call today are probably wage earners, which means you're working for someone else, you're paid for the work that you do. And then at the end of the year, you're issued what is called the W-2, which most of us are familiar with, which has information on it. A W-2 is an information return. And of course, it has gross income and other things on it, tax withheld, Social Security, things like that. And so that's the basic certification or test. A lot of our customers in the VITA program are wage earners. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And then a lot of them are receiving Social Security, and you'll see that on the basic certification. The advanced certification, that's going to be where it says full scope returns, and you're going to see the Schedule A is an alpha, which are itemized deductions. You're going to see capital gains and losses. Some people, when they hear the term capital gains and losses, they start to get a little concerned. We're going to demystify that. We're going to talk about what is called a capital asset, and selling or disposing of a capital asset, and then calculating the appropriate gain or loss. And in the software, for most of us, is going to be pretty easy. We'll show you how to do that. And then it uses the term here, complex pension issues. Well, I don't know who came up with that term, but there are pensions that individuals receive. I don't know if it's complex. We'll talk about the simplified method. And you'll find, again, a lot of these things are basic. Once you do the reading, you'll be able to figure it out. And here's another thing at the VITA site, whether you're working at St. Killian's or you're working at my site, we have individuals who have worked there for many, many years. They have experience. Some of them are certified public accountants, At some of the sites, we have licensed attorneys, and then we also have enrolled agents, and then we also have members of the California Tax Education Council. So you're surrounded by people that have a lot of experience. And so you'll learn from those individuals. And for that matter, I'm an enrolled agent, and I learn from people every year because there's things I have not seen before. But again, that's the advanced certification. And this is my recommendation. People are going to do what they're going to do. My recommendation is once you certify with the ethics test and the intake and interview test, my recommendation is to certify at the basic level and then go to the advanced level. I think that's the way to do business. At my site at Coastline College in Garden Grove, I have all of my my volunteers, all of my students certified at the basic and the advanced, and also on the military course. For the purposes of St. Killian's, we do not certify Rico. If you have someone who's got a Puerto Rican return, most likely they'll probably go down to Camp Pendleton, which is in San Diego County. It's a Marine base, and they have individuals there who are certified on Puerto Rico. We have a certification called the Foreign Student and Scholars. The site that I'm familiar with is Cal State Fullerton, where they have their international students certify on that course, and they're able to help out some of the international students. The military certification, it's not super difficult, but it does have topics pertaining to what is called the armed forces and reserve component individuals. And when you hear the term armed forces for the purposes of tax, it not only includes Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and all of that, but also the United States Public Health Service and another organization. And the
What's
one
that,
thing,
Dan?
go ahead.
Yes. It's
I'm sorry.
I saw it.
Is that a question? Do you have a question? Okay, sounds like we got some chatter there. Okay, so the military certification also includes preparing what is called the Schedule E as an Echo, and that's for rental property. And so that gets a little bit more involved, but it's not complex. And this is an important thing about the military certification. Again, not everybody does it. I think at St. Killian's, we had a couple of people who were certified on military, but we also address the issue of depreciation. And this is important in the VITA program. We don't calculate depreciation. In the tax world, depreciation is called cost recovery. What we do is we get that depreciation amount from the taxpayer, and we include that on the Schedule E as an Echo for the military course. And then the international course, again, very few people are certified on that. That covers a number of things to include the foreign earned income exclusion. And so again, at the church, you're probably looking at the basic and the advanced, and it depends on whether or not Sean or the leadership wants to go into further certification. If you're a tax professional, and there are different types, typically you're going to hear about an enrolled agent, a CPA, and a member of the California Tax Education Council, and then a licensed attorney. Those are typically the professionals that you're going to bump into. And so those individuals, if they choose, they can take what is called the Circular 230. That's a Treasury circular that has the rules of the road for tax practitioners representing clients in front of the IRS. And so if you're one of those professionals, you can take that test, and that suffices for the advanced certification. My recommendation, if you're a St. Killian's VITA volunteer, whether you're a CPA or whether you're brand new, my recommendation again is certify up to the advanced level. If you're a tax professional, again, the Circular 230 is available to you. I would still recommend that you certify at the advanced level. Again, just my recommendation. All right, and then we're just going through the Link and Learn write-up here. And here's another thing. Some people are interested in continuing education credits if they are tax professionals. And if you're a tax professional, you know what I'm talking about. And so what you can do in the VITA program, this is one way to get credits. And your credits, you can get a maximum of 18. What happens is you're working as a volunteer, you're a certified or licensed professional, and then you go back to St. Killian and say, hey, I would like to have some of these credits to be approved, and then that way it's sent to the IRS, and you get some of your education credits. And so, for example, if you're a member of the California Tax Education Council, which means you're a registered tax preparer in California, you have to have what are called continuing education credits every year. And if you don't get those credits, and there's various ways to get it, then you're going to lose that certification. And another example, I'm an enrolled agent. So over a period of 3 years, I have to get so many credits. And this is one way to get some of your credits. And again, that's the VITA program. And I think last year at the church, I remember bumping into a couple of enrolled agents and a couple of CPAs. And so again, this is the certification for them.
Does that CE apply only to the tax field?
Can you repeat your question and be a little loud?
Yeah, this is Clayton. Can you hear me all right now?
I can hear you.
Does that CE apply only to the tax field, or would that apply to securities licensing?
Boy, I heard tax bill and security. You're going to have to repeat your question and be a little slower.
Okay. I'm a financial planner.
Okay.
Does that continuing education for the does that apply to my current licensing, securities licenses?
What I remember, I think there's a term for a certified financial planner. Are you a certified financial planner?
No, I've got another designation, but I was just wondering about my other licensure.
Okay, so the answer is no, you're not going to get any type of continuing education credits because you're not considered a tax professional.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to go to the very top, back to Link and Learn. And let's see, I'm going to ask, Shauna, you said students can come off mute. So I'm going to ask one of my students, Bon, are you there?
I'm there. Thank you.
Well, Bon, can you read that paragraph that says Link and Learn Taxes is?
Link and Learn Taxes is the web-based program. Provide 6 certification courses for the volunteer and refresh course for the returning volunteers. The training purpose volunteer income tax assistance, VITA, and tax counseling for the older TCE partners and volunteers to provide quality tax return preparation services in their local communities. This fund,
Okay, I'm still connected to here.
That's it.
Okay, you left off this fun. You still there?
Yes, I'm still there. Interested courses, teachers, you two. I cannot read it. I'm so confused. Sorry for that.
You want me to take over?
Yes, please.
All right, here we go. So this fun interactive course teaches you to accurately prepare income tax returns, and then you can obtain volunteer certifications along the way at your own pace. And that's important when you're certifying. You've got all the time in the world to certify. So if you decide to take a break or take a day off, you can come back and you can continue to certify. And then we talked about professionals can earn continuing education credits, and that's an important thing. And so again, it says in the right at VITA, we are the VITA program at St. Killian's. The term tax counseling for the elderly, there are TCE sites, there's not a lot of them. And then you also have what is called AERP sites, which is an acronym. It used to be known as the American Association for Retired Persons. Now they just use the acronym. But again, our focus is VITA and Link and Learn. So let's go ahead and jump into the Link and Learn site. So this landing page is a very, very busy landing page. It has a lot of information on it. And so what we'll do, we'll kind of divide and conquer here. And so you come over here to this this link where it says, click here to see the contents of each course. So each course is going to have information pertaining to income, deductions, and credits. And so what we're going to do, we're going to open that up. And you're going to see the basic and the advanced menu. And again, everybody's going to certify at a minimum at St. Killian's. You've got to be certified at the basic. And before you certify on the basic test, you have to, of course, take the ethics test, the volunteer standards of conduct, and the intake and interview, which again, we're going to talk about this morning. So this basic menu, you can see a laundry list of items, and I'll call them PowerPoint. I'm not a IT guy, but you can start with changes is here. Now, this is an important consideration. Right now, what you're seeing is tax year 2022. So if you are very eager and you jump into certification for tax year 2022, good for you. But when tax year 2023 is uploaded on this website, then you're going to have to certify for tax year 2023, because every single year you've got to be certified on that new tax year. And so right now, again, everything that you see on the website is 2022. But again, going back to the basic menu, it talks about the introductions, it talks about the course, it talks about the various things that you're going to learn about, filing returns, filing statuses, which we're going to talk about today, exemptions, and then a lot of things that we do in the program are based on income, because those are some of the $64,000 questions we get. Somebody comes in with an income item, and we determine whether or not it's taxable or non-taxable. Of course, if it's taxable, it's going to go on the tax return. And then, of course, a lot of our customers have Social Security, and the vast majority of them for Social Security, they're not paying any federal income tax on their Social Security. And then you can see the adjustments, the deductions, the standard deduction, which we talk about. And again, just a laundry list of things. And these are very, some of them are very detailed. So what we'll do, as an example, we'll go to income and we'll open that up. And I'm going to check with Sean. Sean, can you see the slide that says wages, interest?
No, I still see Lincoln Learn Taxes e-learning.
You can't see where it says publication 4491?
No, I see the landing
Okay.
menu for
No
Lincoln
harm,
Learn.
no foul. We'll just go back to our list here.
Hey, Jerry, do you have two screens with you or just one screen?
I have one screen.
Yeah, make sure you're sharing your screen and not your app.
Yeah.
All right. So what we'll do is I will take my break at approximately 10 o'clock, and I'll discuss this with Sean. Okay, back to our basic menu. So again, this is your laundry list of items. And so this is what I would do if I was a brand new volunteer. I would obtain either electronically or the hard copy documents that we're going to talk about today. All of these documents that are available electronically, you can go to the IRS website. Once you're ready for the California Franchise Tax Board, same thing, you can go to the Franchise Tax Board and you can access these documents. They're free. You don't need any passwords to get these documents, but you can download them if you choose. So the basic menu, this would be your tutorial, if you will. You'd go through them. And I recognize if you're a brand new volunteer, some of these terms are brand new to you. And so you have to do some reading. And the go-to document, I think, for most of us is going to be the IRS publication 4012. And we're going to show you that this morning also. But again, here's the basic menu of all the various topics that you're going to learn. And then if you go over to your right-hand side, you'll see the advanced menu. And yes, this is a little bit more involved. I guess I could use the word a little bit more challenging and some more topics. And so again, if you're brand new, this is my recommendation. Yes, you can go straight to the advanced certification if you want, but if you do the basic menu, you're going to understand the deductions, you're going to understand the income, the filing status, the exemptions, all those things. And then when you jump into the advanced menu, it's going to be a little bit, I'll use the term easier for you because you've been exposed to some of these topics. But again, if you're brand new, just simply go through it step by step, And this is probably your go-to page for those various tutorials or PowerPoint presentations. Okay, and then just going down to the optional courses, and I recognize a lot of people will not certify in the optional courses, but some of them like to. And so if you want to certify, there's a military menu, and there are a lot of reading materials to include the IRS Publication 3, which is the Armed Forces Tax Guide. And then you have the international menu, and that's a shorter certification. Okay, so these are the two menus you'll spend a lot of time with. And then let's go back if I can. And let's go, because a lot of people, I remember when I was in college, everybody wanted to get ready for the test. So you study the material and then you take the test. So let's go ahead and go to our certification. Certification equals test, test equals certification. So we're going to click on there. And this is 2022, so 2023 will probably look similar to this. You can see the levels of certification. Again, you're focused on basic and advanced. You're going to be, we'll start with basic, and you're going to be a student. And then we're going to start the basic course. Our goal is to get to the certification. We want to take the certification, show you how to take it, or show you how to access it, I should say. And then again, you can see the various topics. And there are many topics. And that's why that publication 4012 is written and provided to you. And Sean, if I remember correctly, you're going to get hard copies for all of the volunteers, the 4012.
For all of the St. Killian volunteers, we have the hard copy 4012.
Okay. And there again, there are publications, there are literally dozens and dozens and dozens of publications. Chances are you're going to spend the vast majority of your time when you're looking at tax law, you're going to look at the IRS publication 4012, which is the resource guide. Okay, so again, we want to access the certification test. And so we'd come down here and we'd click on certification test. And again, another busy slide, if you will. And before we jump into the accessing the certification, I just want to point out a few things. These quick links over here, again, have a lot of material. These Link and Learn tax lessons are available to you. There's a training guide if you want to review that. When you see the term Practice Lab, this is the tax preparation software. This software is very close to practitioner software. So for example, I use the TaxSlayer Pro software in my tax practice, and it's very similar to what you see in the VITA program. It's not identical because the contract that the government has with TaxSlayer, there's certain things that are not shown on the practice lab, but again, very similar to the software we're going to use at St. Killian. When you see the acronym VSOC, that's the Volunteer Standards of Conduct. There's training for that. It's a short read, if you will. I typically read the executive summary, and then I take the Volunteer Standards of Conduct training. We also call it the ethics test. I think the last time I took it last year, I think it took me maybe 15 minutes, something like that. And then, of course, there's continuing education, and that's updated every year. This is for tax professionals. And then we talked about that intake and interview sheet, which we're going to introduce you to. The new one's out on the street, if you will. It's been published. And we utilize this intake sheet for every single return that we prepare. The taxpayer is going to complete it. Our volunteers will perfect it. And then our quality reviewers are going to review it. And when you hear the term quality review, what that means is every tax return is reviewed by a quality reviewer, another volunteer typically at a higher certification level. And a lot of our quality reviewers are going to be individuals that have come back year after year. They've got a lot of experience, and every return is reviewed. So if I prepare a return at, I work at Coastline. If I prepare a return at Coastline, someone else has got to review it. And same thing. So it doesn't mean you've made a mistake. It simply means that's the protocol in the VITA program. Every tax return is going to be reviewed. And then if you decide to do some additional instructing, you have these instructor tools, classroom presentations, and just about every type of topic you can think of: federal tax law, lesson plans, federal tax law, and then you actually have an instructor guide. And what you're seeing here, this VITA TCE Central, this is federal tax law. These are federal topics. There are no California state topics. Those topics we will introduce you to later. And then there's franchise tax board training. As I understand it, will be conducted sometime in January. Okay, I'll hesitate for a moment and see if anybody has any questions before we move on.
Yeah. All the publications you mentioned were on that list that we just showed, the basic and the advanced, couple clicks back.
Yes, you can find publications. And again, even if you're talking to an expert, like I used to work for the IRS before I retired, and every single year, I would bump into a couple, 2 or 3 forms or publications I've never seen before. IRS, what they do is they create new forms every year, and they create new publications. And so we're not talking about hundreds, we're talking about thousands of publications, forms, and documents. And so in the VITA program, usually we're only going to be using maybe a couple dozen. But yes, you can get them on the IRS website. You can see this this link here where it talks about publications and forms. But thankfully in the VITA program, our go-to document when we're at the VITA site is going to be that IRS publication 4012, and that's the volunteer resource guide. Did that help you out? Okay. All right. Any more questions before we go to accessing our certification test? Okay. And so what we're going to do is we're at the certification test section. And before you certify, of course, you're going to be reading the material. You're going to be comfortable with the various topics. And then you've decided it's time to take the certification. And so in order to take the certification, you've got to register because you're providing your information to the IRS contractor. And so what you would do is you would create an account and you would click on that blue tab that says create an account. And the information that you're going to be asked is going to be looking very similar, or it'll look very similar to this particular site. So you're going to determine that you're a VITA volunteer, and most of you will be a VITA volunteer. So you would click that. And most of you probably do not want to become a site coordinator. I know Sean, he's going to have to click yes. And most of you probably will not be an instructor. If you choose to be an instructor, maybe a nonprofit's going to pick you up. What you've got to do is you've got to have some experience. You've got to, you want to certify at the highest level that you can. When you see this message, it talks about IRS, that's the Internal Revenue Service. SPEC is an acronym that stands for Stakeholder Partnerships, Education, and Communication. This is a small office, if you will, within the Wage Investment Operating Division. And these are the folks that administer the VITA program. They do some other things. And that's the organization that I worked for the last about 10 years that I worked at the IRS. And so you're not a spec manager. Most of you do want to volunteer, so you would check yes. Your training source, this would probably be for the vast majority of volunteers. Even if you're 85 years old, I have a couple guys that work for me, and they are senior citizens. They're up there in years, and even they will use the e-learning. So typically you're not going to do a paper certification. You're going to do e-learning. And then this is where you're going to provide the contractor with your name. And you can ignore the acronym SEID. This is only for IRS employees. You will have IRS employees, active employees, who are involved in the VITA program. So what that means is they volunteer on Saturdays and they work at nonprofits, at churches, and things like that. You're going to provide a username and a password that you're going to come up with, and you're going to click here, and on this password complexity requirement, it says you got to use 8 characters. And then once you enter that data and it's accepted, if you will, then you've got that registration part completed. It will ask you for an email address, and that could be your personal, it could be your school, it could be your business, it could be your Gmail account, whatever it is. And then you will provide some type of street address. And again, that could be school, that could be your personal residence, that could be your business address. And this is something some of my volunteers do not provide me with their phone number. And I tell them, if I need to get a hold of you, then a phone number is one way to do it. Of course, there's also email. And same thing, when you're working for me, when you're working at the St. Killian's Church for Sean, it's okay to give a phone number. They're not going to call you and bug you. But what they will do, they'll call you and ask you questions. Are you coming to work? Because it's already 11 o'clock. So provide your phone number. I think that's important. I think that's a responsible thing to do. And then toward the very bottom, your time zone is going to be the Pacific Standard Time in California. Usually your partner organization, and I'm going to defer to Sean on this one. Sean, do you want the volunteers at St. Killian's to put down St. Killian's or Orange County United Way?
St. Killian Catholic Church.
Okay, there you go. And then if you volunteered before, then you would indicate you've been there for a couple years, or you've been there for many, many years, something like that. And then the next question, it talks about professional status, and this is going to be for your tax professionals, and CE stands for continuing education. And so you have a laundry list of preparers. Typically, you're going to be bumping into an enrolled agent, a certified public accountant, a CTEC, which is an acronym that stands for the California Tax Education Council. CRTP is a CTEC registered tax preparer. And then we do have some licensed attorneys in our program. I haven't seen a whole lot of tax attorneys in our program, but I'm sure they're out there. So again, this is for your tax professionals. The acronym PTIN. PTIN is a Preparer Tax Identification Number, and that would be for your tax professionals. So, for example, I'm a tax guy, and I have a PTIN that's been assigned to me by the IRS. And so, what I would do, I would enter that information in there. And so, if that does not apply to you, then you can simply move on. Your CTEC number, this is a number that's issued to the CTEC registered tax preparers, and it starts with the letter A as an alpha. And in order to be a CTEC member, you have to do a number of things, including you've got to take what is called qualifying education, and there's numerous providers for that. And then you register with CTEC, which is an organization up in Sacramento established by the state legislature. And then you're going to provide them with your fingerprints. You're going to provide them with a bond. You're going to purchase a surety bond, and then you're going to pay a modest fee to become to get your registration certificate. And then you would enter your CTEC number here. And then when you're all ready, you'd hit register, and then once you hit register, you're ready to jump into the certification levels. Any questions about registration for the certification?
I don't have any.
All right, very good. Okay, so we're going to go back here, back to the landing page. And so once you're registered to access the certification, then you would come over here, you would plug in your username and password. And I think Sean mentioned this. I've done this probably a half a dozen times over the many, many years. I'll garble my username, I'll garble my password, and then it's a little bit of a nut roll to log in. So write it down, put it in your diary, put it in your journal, and that way you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and sign into my account. This is from last year. And in order to take the certification, what will happen is it starts off with a volunteer standards of conduct. Now, I've already taken the certification for last year, and so it's not showing the new year, if you will, for the certification. Or stated differently, it doesn't show me the link to take my volunteer standards of conduct. But once you log in and you're ready to take the 2023 tax year volunteer standards of conduct, you'll click on the link and then you'll hit launch, and it'll have all those questions for you. And it's a self-paced certification. And then once you complete the volunteer standards of conduct, then you're going to go to the intake and interview, and you'll have a launch button which will be available to you, so you can take that. And then again, if you're a tax professional, you can take the Circular 230 examination or certification. I do not recommend that for professionals just taking that. I recommend, yes, take it, but also take the advanced, because you would be surprised. And again, I've bumped into CPAs, I've bumped into enroll agents who flunked the advanced certification because a lot of them, they're working with partnerships, they're working with corporations, and they don't have that recent experience when it comes to filing status or dependents. And so, sure, take this certification, but also take that advanced. So a couple things I want to show you before we leave this page. On the right-hand side, it talks about the volunteer agreement. Well, the volunteer agreement is a document. It's an IRS document that Sean at the church is going to be interested in getting, because it's a requirement to have that certificate, that volunteer agreement on file. So you can see right here where it says, open and complete your volunteer agreement. This is done automatically. It's going to self-populate once you take these certifications. And again, your certifications start with the volunteer standards of conduct, intake and interview, and then you would go to your basic and your advanced. And chances are those are the 4 certifications that you're going to complete for St. Killian's. If you're working for me, and I know we have a couple folks on the call that are working on or will be working at Coastline College, it is a requirement to also certify on the on the military certification. Okay, back over here, we're going to show you the volunteer agreement, and this is between you and the VITA program. And Sean, let me know if you can see the 13615.
Yes, Jerry, it came up.
All right. Okay, so this is from last year. You can see in the upper left-hand corner, October 2022. This is revised every year, so 2023 is going to be the new one. So it has information pertaining to the program. It has what is called the Volunteer Standards of Conduct, and we're going to talk about that. And then toward the middle of the page, it talks about the things that you should not do and you should do. And what happens is 99.9% of our volunteers, they do great stuff. There's no issues. Every once in a while, it happens, and I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times in a couple of decades where someone's not doing what they should be doing. What they do then is they, being the site, would disinvite the volunteer, and the volunteer would go away. They would not work at the site. But typically that doesn't happen. Our volunteers are dedicated. They want to do the right thing. And yes, if you make a mistake, mistakes are corrected. But if you're going out of your way to be a bad person, if you will, then the site coordinator will chase you away. I've chased away a couple people. It's not a pleasant experience, but at the end of the day, as my former boss used to say, sometimes you have to fire volunteers. That's just the way it is. They're not going to play ball. And in the VITA program, you have to play ball, which means you have to adhere to the rules, the protocols, and for that matter, the laws that are put down. Okay, and then the second page, and Sean, let me know if you can see the second page.
Yes, Jerry, let's see it
So
clear.
the second page, this is important. This has all that information that you entered into the Link and Learn program, all your administrative data. It talks about where you're going to be volunteering at, or your sponsor. In this case, I've got Coastline. It has a number of years that you volunteered. It's going to also have your certification levels. And so here you can see where I've got my certification level for everybody has to do the volunteer standards of conduct. Let's say you decide to volunteer and you don't want to be a tax person. You want to be the guy or the gal who's bringing in supplies, providing support. Well, you're definitely going to be welcome. At my side of Coastline, we have a couple people who do not do any returns, but they still have to certify on the volunteer standards of conduct. So you're going to see a P as in Papa. That means you've taken and passed that particular certification. The intake, you've taken and passed that. And then here, I was a site coordinator. At my site at Coastline, I've got a couple of people that help with site coordinating duty. So they have to take the site coordinator certification. You've got, in this case, I did not take the basic because I took the federal tax law. I guess I got lazy that year, didn't take the basic, but I did take the advanced in the military. So this is going to show you all of your certifications. And if you are a tax professional, you're going to have that federal tax law update. And then what you would do is, again, if you're a tax professional, you would populate this section here, type of professional that you are. And then down here, these are your continuing education credits. Now, we do have a lot of CTEC folks in the VITA program, so they can get certain credits. And you can see right here, this is my name. This is my P10. I'm an enrolled agent. And again, last year, I think we had a couple of CPAs. You have to be an active CPA. You have to be an active certified financial planner. You've got to be a licensed attorney, and you have to be a member of the California State Bar. CTEC, same thing. You have to be current. Enroll agent, you got to be current. Okay, so back up here. And so this is what I would recommend you do. Once you certify, you're going to provide your 13615, this document that we're looking at, to your site coordinator. And then I've got people who visit my site. They're from other sites. And when they show up, I welcome them and I ask them, are you going to be working here today? Typically, they call ahead. And if they don't, they go, yes, we'll be working here. And the first thing I ask them for is, do you have a government ID? We're talking about volunteers now. And then do you have your 13615 with these certification levels? So they provide me with the 13615. We put it in our VITA book, verify their ID, and we put them to work. And so this is the document that Sean and others at the church will be asking you for. Sean, any questions about the 13615?
I don't have any questions, but I wonder if any of the new people have questions about that.
Oh, yeah. If you're a new volunteer, please come off mute and
Two
ask your
questions. One is, we should wait till it says 2023 before we fill out anything. Is that probably a wise thing to do?
Yes.
Yeah, I would probably, of course, it depends on, if you want to get some practice in. If you want to get some practice in, you can knock out the 2022 tax year information. But if that doesn't appeal to you, then yes, wait for the 2023 to be posted, and then jump into that, conduct your training, your review, and then take your certifications and generate your 13615.
And do we have a sense of when that 2023 will be up? Is it coming in the next couple of weeks, or?
Short answer is yes. Usually the IRS uses the term on or about the 15th of November.
Yeah, and let me just jump in here quick. Usually it's, as Jerry said, 15th, but this year they are switching to a new vendor to provide the software, so it might be a little bit later. They're saying around Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Usually the IRS will give you a date, and then they typically will post it early. And there's no emails that go out and say that the 2023 is posted. You're trolling around the site, and all of a sudden you see all the 2023 information is posted.
Is there an actual deadline for us to get this done, or is it just first thing we're on the site to assist with tax prep?
Is that a question or a statement?
Question.
And what's the question? Can you speak slower and a little louder?
Is there a deadline for us to get these certifications?
Yes, there is a deadline, and from St. Killian's, usually Sean and his crew will say, we need your 13615s by such and such a date. Usually what happens is when you go to a VITA site, again, you're coordinating with that site coordinator. They will not allow you to be a volunteer unless you present this 13615. But you want to get that to Sean and his crew, most likely in, Sean, I think about mid-January. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, before we start preparation. So third week of January is the deadline.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Sean, I think this is a good time to take a break. I've got 10:05. We'll come
right.
back at 10:15.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to know what would be the advantages of taking the 2022 courses? Would that be with tax laws changing every year? What would be the advantage?
The advantage would be practice, practice, practice. And the 2023 tax year, it's a little bit different than 2022, but there are many similarities. Certain things do not change. For example, a lot of income items do not change.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. We'll see everybody at 10:15. Sean, we're about ready to get started.
Yes, Jerry, I've got the recording turned back on.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we've given you that introduction to the Lincoln Learn program, and we will visit that again, certainly when the 2023 program is posted. And then just a quick reminder, if you're going to join us for all of the Zoom sessions, we have Zoom sessions on November 11th, December 2nd, December 9th, and December 16th. And we were generally going to be following that draft schedule that was published yesterday. And so if you have a copy of that, that's what we're going to be following. All right, moving on. And so now we're going to talk about the practice lab. You'll be spending time in the practice lab because when you go through your certification, for some of the questions, you'll simply answer the question. And other questions in the Lincoln Learn certification program, you have to prepare a return. Doing it in your head is probably not going to work. I've tried to do some of this stuff in my head, and you're just not going to be successful. You just have to prepare a return. And then that's why the practice lab exists. And again, it uses the platform, the TaxSlayer Pro platform. I think, and Sean, you mentioned they're going to another contractor this year, but they're not going to another software program, right?
Right. It's going to be the same software, obviously revised for next year's laws. But one thing to be aware of is with TaxSlayer Pro moving, they're going to send out an email sometime in the next 2 weeks to everybody who's a registered user, because you'll have to reset your password and you'll be going to a new website. So you'll get an email. It's not a phishing attempt. It's a real thing from the IRS, but it's probably going to look weird because we don't usually get that.
Okay, but that's a platform that's used. It's a user-friendly software. I've used it for I think about 5 or 6 years. I want to say they've been around for at least a couple, 2 or 3 decades, and so it's pretty good software. And when you're talking about tax preparation software, the last time I looked, I think there's about 27 different companies in the United States that offer software. In the VITA program, the software is provided free to the sites. Not all sites in the United States use TaxSlayer. Some actually go out and purchase their software because they choose to do so. But again, the vast majority of sites will use the TaxSlayer Pro, which is provided for free by the IRS. Okay, so when you want to use the software to practice, you have to, again, register to use it. You're going to provide information that the contractor is collecting. And we're going to, you want to focus in Pro, I want to jot that down. I've had a lot of people. In fact, I remember one time a number of years ago, I was teaching a tax class and I forgot the password to get into the practice lab. And I wrote it down, but I didn't have that document with me. So I had to call my wife and I said, hey, what is that password? And she goes, Train Pro Web, all one word, all uppercase. Okay, so let's give you a quick introduction to the software. And so let me go ahead and jump into that. And so we're back to the IRS Link and Learn. And I'm going to hit on this, this particular tab, Link and Learn Home. And it brings me to this landing page for VITA TC Central. And Sean, can you see the
we see
page? Okay, great. Okay, so once again, we've gone through some of this stuff before. Let's go to the practice lab over here on the right-hand side. And this is where it talks about the Link and Learn, accessing this particular software. And it talks about various publications. It talks about the IRS. And then it says, if you want to access this, you want to put in that Train Pro Web. And if you're not a tax person, you haven't prepared returns, maybe you did your own once or twice. Again, you're going to find once you certify, the program itself is, again, user-friendly. I think you're going to not have a difficult time utilizing the software. Now, there are certain tabs that you're going to bounce around. You're going to try to find the tab that you need to open up to enter data. And that's going to happen. You know, maybe you have to talk to that senior person at St. Killian's, but the bottom line is, again, this is user-friendly software. So let me go ahead and log in, see if it'll accept my credentials. And if you haven't signed in, then you create an account similar to that certification. And when you create that account, you're going to enter that administrative data that pertains to you, and you're going to answer questions that pertain to you. And if a question is posed that doesn't pertain to you, you ignore it and you move on. But once you create an account, then you would come here and you would sign in. All right, so this is a very, very busy landing page, and you can spend probably weeks on this page, but let's just go ahead and kind of cut to the chase, if you will. So if you are going to utilize this to get some additional training, my recommendation is go down to section 4 where it says preparing your return. And these are tutorials that the TaxSlayer Pro company will create, and they will post in this particular document. So preparing a return, and it has all the various topics you can think of. And then on section 6, where it says enhancements and miscellaneous, it has information to include practice returns. And so if you want to get additional practice, you can go to those returns. They'll give you a fact pattern, and they'll give you what accountants call check figures. And so once you complete that practice return, you can check your work with the check figures provided by the TaxSlayer Pro company. But again, a very busy page. I have spent a little bit of time in section 4 over the years, and in section 6. And here's another thing that you can ignore in section 6. If there are any returns that have married filing separate taxpayers, you could ignore that, because in the VITA program at St. Killian's, and for that matter, the VITA program in the state of California, we do not prepare married filing separate returns. And so you can ignore that. Okay, and we go back up here, and I like to call it the big blue tab where it says go to the practice area. And when you hit the practice area, you're going to see something like this. It, again, looks very similar to the professional software that I purchase every year for my practice. And in the upper right-hand corner, it says change tax years. For the VITA program, for the practice lab, it gives you 2 years. Those are the choices, 2021 and 2022. Once 2023 is posted, then your choices will be 2022 to practice and 2023 to practice. And then when you're at the VITA site itself and you're using the software, it usually goes back anywhere from like 5 to 6 years. Typically, we're preparing returns for 2023, and we might go back maybe 1 or 2 years. Okay, and so now we're going to go ahead and start on a new return, and we're just going to show you, going to navigate a little bit through the software this morning. This screen asks for a social security number, so I'm going to put in a mock number, 400, and throw in another about 7333. There we go. And then this is important when you're at the VITA site. We ask individuals bring in their Social Security card or some type of document from the Social Security Administration that shows the number. Because what happens is when our electronic return originators attempt to electronically file a return, if the Social Security number is incorrect, then what happens is there is a rejection, which means it's not accepted for e-file. And then our EROs or a member of the VITA staff has to perfect that return, which takes a little extra time. And so you wanna make sure you get that correct. What I do at my site at Coastline, if they don't have their Social Security card, then I ask them, do they have some type of document from the Social Security Administration? And usually people know before they come to the site, they want to have that Social Security number. And that would be for themselves if they're filing a joint return for their spouse. If they have any kids they want to put on their return for dependents, that would be Social Security numbers for them. We will talk about ITIN later, individual taxpayer identification numbers later. All right, so we hit that. And then what happens, it brings you to this screen right here. And again, we're going to spend a little time on this. When we go through tax preparation, we'll spend a lot more time. So you're going to read about filing statuses. And the reason filing statuses are important, once you determine taxable income on a return, that software is going to look at the taxable income and the filing status to determine the individual income tax amount. So filing status is important. Most of our folks will either be single, married, filing joint. We do not do separate. We've got head of household and then qualifying surviving spouse. Those are typically the filing statuses that we'll use. So for this particular case, we're going to show you a very basic return, and this is a single filer. And that means at the end of tax year 2023, which is December 31st, that means the individual was not married. Okay, we'll throw in a name. The Social Security number, we've already populated that. And then here's another thing that we need, date of birth. Most people know their date of birth, but every once in a while they forget their kid's date of birth. And so we want to make sure that we know dates of birth for everybody who's going on the return. We'll make our taxpayer here about, let's say about 30 years of age. It asks for an occupation. We'll throw in a occupation. And then we're not going to go through everything right now. We're just going to give you a quick introduction. So there's a lot of things in the software that you will not be making entries for. And so, for example, one question it asks about, is a taxpayer blind? And that means the tax definition of blindness, which we talk about later. Sometimes we prepare returns for a deceased individual, typically a deceased adult, and maybe the mother is getting the refund for the adult son who's passed away, something like that. This is the questions that we ask. People want to contribute $3. And what that means is the presidential election campaign fund, that $3 doesn't directly come out of the taxpayer's pocket. It's simply an order to the federal government to separate or segregate monies and put it in that presidential election campaign fund. So when the election comes up every 4 years, if you qualify, meaning the candidate, then they can go ahead and tap that fund. We don't do at St. Killian's military, at least we don't do it right now, but at my site at Coastline, we do military. And so you're going to have people who will answer this question about a combat zone. Okay, and then another thing that this is something that came out a couple of years ago, and probably everybody on the call knows what cryptocurrency is, or they've heard of it. The other term is digital asset. And so if you've got people who are purchasing cryptocurrency, we can help them out at the VITA site. But what we cannot do, we cannot help them if they have sold, or you're going to hear the tax term disposed of, which means they've relinquished title to that asset. And so we don't help them out if they have sold cryptocurrency. And a lot of times your VITA clients will ask you, well, why don't you do that? And the short answer is we're not trained to do it. And the protocols and the rules of the VITA program, we have to adhere to them. So they're put down by the IRS. Okay, we're going to throw in an address for this guy. And here's another thing in the VITA program. We prepare federal returns and we will prepare a California state return. We don't do part year returns. We don't do non-resident California returns. We won't prepare returns for individuals who reside in the state of Arizona. It's just California. And when they say, why not? Then go back to that pat answer. We are not trained to do it. And the rules and the protocols in the program won't allow us to do it. Okay, we're going to throw in a number here. And then this is basic stuff, but you'd be surprised how basic stuff can get garbled. If you're working with a taxpayer, you want to get obviously the phone number because sometimes we have to reach out and perfect the return. You also want to make sure you get an email address, and that's usually not a bridge too far. If you're working with a client that's married, you want to get both telephone numbers of the spouses and of course the email. When you hit continue, what that does, it simply means the software is saving the entries that you've made. This screen will probably look like the 2023. You can see in the upper left-hand corner, it says 2022. And then over here, you can see the name of the taxpayer. And so we'll just run through this. And so it says, did your name change? And the entire time I've been associated with taxes, I've met one guy who changed his name legally. And that's the important thing. If you're changing your name, you can wake up in the morning, you can say, well, yesterday my name was Jerry Muir. This morning, my name is Spider. Well, you have to go into court and you got to get that name changed in order for that to be recognized by the software and the Social Security Administration. So we don't have a name that's changed. You're going to be reading about various credits, and one of the credits is the California renter's credit. And what that means is you got someone renting an apartment or a home, and it's going to be on property located in California. And the vast majority of our VITA clients who are renters, they can qualify for this renter's credit. And you're going to hear me use the term qualified. So just about anything you do in life, you go to the grocery store and you buy a candy bar, you're qualified to buy that candy bar if you have money in your pocket. And same thing with the various credits, refundable, non-refundable credits, you have to qualify. And we're going to show you, not today, but we're going to run through a lot of these credits during this training session over the next few weeks. So in this case, they're not a renter. This is something, again, you have to get past the software. There's a concept called use tax. And so I'll give you a quick example. You go to Oklahoma, you're visiting some friends and family, and you make the wild decision to purchase a $200,000 recreational vehicle. So you spend the money, you pay sales tax in Oklahoma, let's say it's 5%. And then you drive to California where you live, and of course, you're going to register your recreational vehicle. Let's say the tax in your jurisdiction in that part of California is 9%. You paid 5% in Oklahoma. So the difference is 4%, and that would be use tax you're going to pay the great state of California. Very few people have use tax on VITA returns, so we're going to put 0. And then down here, again, another slide we have to get through. It says, if your use tax is 0, did you pay it to the CDTFA? That acronym is the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. The vast majority of the time, it'll be no. This organization, they have different types of taxes. So for example, when you buy that candy bar, you're paying sales tax. And the way it works is the retailer is supposed to collect that sales tax from you and then eventually remit it to the state of California. Well, they would remit it to this organization, the CDTFA. You've heard over the years, this came out in 2010. So if you're an adult, let's say you're 30 years of age, you probably heard about this. If you're 22, maybe you have to go back and do some research. But on the return, we will ask individuals if they have health insurance. And there's many ways to get health insurance. You can pick up the telephone and call a broker, and you can buy insurance for you and your family. Probably going to be a little expensive, but you can do that. A lot of people get it through their work provided by their employer. If you're a veteran, in some cases, you get it through the Veterans Administration. If you're low income in California, you can, if you qualify, you can go to California and you can sign up for Medi-Cal. If you're a senior and you want to, you can sign up for Medicare. So there's different ways to get health insurance. And so we do ask that question. And in California, we also have Covered California, which we're going to talk about at length. Covered California, if you're not familiar with that, that's an organization that is essentially the counterpart to the Federal Healthcare Exchange, where if you qualify, you go in there, you provide all of your information, you purchase health insurance, you pay a premium, and then you are subsidized by the taxpayers. And so, again, different ways to get health insurance. And we will also address if people choose not to get health insurance. So in this case, they have health insurance of some kind, and then their address is the same as on the return as on their house or their apartment. And then these are all the various counties. I forget how many there are in California. I think there's over 50. Typically, we'll probably deal with Orange County residents. All right, get past that slide. This particular slide talks about dependents. And if you've been around the tax world for a number of years, it used to be, going back a few years ago, if you had a dependent, there was a dollar amount associated with that. So it would eventually reduce your taxable income. Well, that doesn't exist right now. Or why we ask questions regarding dependents is because there are tax credits associated with the dependent. And that could be either a qualified child or a qualified relative, which we get into in a big way in this class. Not so much today, but in later sessions. This individual does not have a dependent. And then you get to the what I would call the money slide, and you're going to spend a lot of time on income. And so what I tell people, if you have a taxpayer and they qualify to use the VITA services, there's a place in the income tab to report taxable income amounts. And there are many different types. Most of these, it's not going to be a difficult thing. We're going to have an information return like a W-2, and we'll be able to make those entries in the software. And sometimes it'll be a little bit more challenging. Maybe there's a court settlement. We've got to dig a little bit. The taxpayer still qualifies to use the service, but we just have to find the right tab. Okay, so for this one, very basic return, they're a wage earner. So we're going to go to the form W-2. And when you are at the VITA side, if someone has a W-2, it could be a piece of paper that's been printed out and given to them by their employer. It could be on a digital device, or excuse me, a device like their iPhone or something like that. That's acceptable. They just have to have a W-2. All right, and there's different types of W-2s. Most people will have a standard. Sometimes you get it corrected, which means your employer made a boo-boo and they gave you a incorrect W-2, and then subsequently they issued a corrected. So I like to tell this story. Years ago, I worked for the IRS and I was issued a W-2. I went back, I looked at it, compared it to my records, and it was incorrect. So I went to the IRS and said, hey, IRS, my employer, you've issued me an incorrect W-2. I need a corrected W-2. And so after a few weeks, I got a corrected W-2. All right, so we have the employee information already populated. And this is all the information regarding our employee, our taxpayer, John. And then over here for employer, this comes right off the W-2. And the mantra that we use is you're going to key it as you see it. And so the EIN, as it says right here, the employer identification number, we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug in the amount right from the W-2. Now you do have auto population. And in some cases, you're not going to make any changes that'll correspond to the W-2. But let's say this employer is not blue dress design. Let's just say it's a blue dress. You just go to the box, you make the section go away that you want to go away, and then you're ready to go. Okay. And this most likely would be a corporate headquarters right here in Colorado. Now, of course, you've got a California resident. Corporate headquarters is in Colorado. That means the company is still going to withhold federal taxes and California state taxes because the individual is a California resident. Okay, wages. Let's say this individual makes $50,000. In our VITA program, typically, and this is the general rule. It's in jelly, or jello, I should say. It's not in concrete. Usually you're looking at someone who's making $64,000 or less. And sometimes you can, it depends on the site coordinator, you can go a little bit more than that, but typically 64,000. Now we're talking about income, we're not talking about net worth. I've done tax returns for individuals who had net worth of $1 million or $2 million, but their income was within the VITA program at the time, $60,000 or less. Okay, so we plug in the amount of gross income over here. Not everybody has federal tax withheld, but most people will. And so we'll throw in an amount of federal tax withheld. Because when you start your job, you fill out all those forms. And one of the forms you fill out a withholding certificate. And your employer will withhold taxes typically. You saw here on box 3, 4, 5, and 6, you saw auto population. And what that means is the Social Security tax. A lot of people pay Social Security, but not everybody pays Social Security. Like, for example, I teach at a college, and I've been there for part-time for 10 years. Haven't paid a penny of Social Security through that college. So you will have some people who pay into another program. But again, this auto population, this equates to 6.2% of that 50,000. And then Medicare, just about everybody that I know pays into Medicare. There might be some exceptions. I know I pay into Medicare. And this is for, some people call it hospital insurance, but this is when you reach the age of, remember correctly, 65, and you sign up for it. And then this Medicare, of course, will take care of your medical needs. But anyway, that is 1.45%. And again, that's auto population there. Now, let's say the Social Security tax is not $3,100. Let's say it's $3,099. You just come here and you make your changes to the program. All right, so that's the federal portion of the W-2. We'll talk about some of these items later, but let's go to box 12, and this is right from the W-2. Box 12, you'll typically use just 2 of these codes in the VITA program. The first one is D as in Delta, and that stands for deferred compensation. You might be familiar with the 401k, that's deferred compensation. There's also a 414, there's a 403b, there's a 457, different types of deferred compensation programs. And then you have Delta Delta, and that would be that health insurance paid by the employer on behalf of the employee. So let's put in, let's say the employer pays $7,000 for this individual's health insurance. Okay, so that's 12. 13, you key it as you see it. Most of the time, you might have a situation where someone's in the retirement plan, so we'll click on that. And then coming over here to box 14, box 14, you have what are called occupational plans. Not every state has an occupational plan. California does. Not everybody pays into California SDI. So for example, again, back to that college I teach at, I don't pay SDI. When I was a federal employee, I didn't pay SDI. In fact, I don't think I've ever paid a penny of SDI in my adult life, but a lot of people do. So they work for a private company. They are required to pay these premiums. These premiums are collected by the employer and then remitted to the state of California. And so when you get sick, or let's say you're an expectant mother, and then you go out on sick leave, and then if you qualify, then you can sign up for your disability payments from the state of California. You can see right here, it says carried to the federal Schedule A. And what that means is SDI is a tax. And if you're paying that tax, then it's reflected on the Schedule A, which we talk about next week. Okay, in this case, the employer collects SDI from this guy and remits it to the state of California. All right, and we're done with 14. Now we come down here, and this is the general rule, and you hear me say this time and time again. Generally, when you have your, in this case, gross income of $50,000, which is in box 1 up above, generally on the California return, you're going to have the same amount. And so I'll give you an exception. I was living and working in Cuba a number of years ago. I had a responsibility to pay federal income tax. And for California, in box 16, it was 0. And so that's an exception to the general rule. But generally in the VITA program, box 16 will equal box 1. Your federal and your state wages will be the same. Your employer state ID number, you're going to have something on your W-2. And this is important. If you transpose numbers, which means you switch them around and the quality reviewer doesn't catch it, when the return is e-file, it will reject because the EIN is incorrect, which means that has to be perfected. So that's why we have quality review. And it's okay to take your time to make sure that information that you input is correct.
Hey, Jerry.
Go ahead.
Just one comment just for everybody's information is that on the SDI, that occasionally that shows up as local taxes on W-2, so it can be a little confusing. So
yeah, that's a good point. I've seen that before, but SDI, we'll go back there. That would, it doesn't matter where it appears on the W-2. This is where you're going to enter it here in box 14 in the software. All right, so back to California. And so state income tax, what that probably should say is state income tax withheld by the employer. And the state income tax is remitted to the state of California. Well, that's a long term. So this is state income tax withheld. And so in this case, let's say he's got $1,000, and that will then appear on the California return. The federal tax withheld will appear on the federal return. And then 18, 19, and 20, you don't need to worry about that because in the state of California, there's no jurisdiction that has individual income tax. And so you can ignore 18, 19, and 20. If you are moving and you're going to the great state of New York, The city of New York has an individual income tax, and the city of Detroit has an individual income tax. Lansing, Michigan has an individual income tax. The District of Columbia has an individual income tax. That's where that data will go, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, we're going to hit continue. And that's all we have there. You can see on this dashboard, you can see this is the W-2 information. And if you have another W-2, and sometimes you're going to have a taxpayer with maybe 2 or 3 W-2s because they work part-time and maybe they have a full-time gig, something like that. So you simply add that W-2. Sometimes you're going to make entries, and I've done this many, many times. The entry is so garbled, I want it to go away. And so you hit that red garbage can and the entire entry will go away. Or maybe you've made a small error and you need to revise it. That would be that blue pencil where you enter the, in this case, the W-2 and make your revisions. Okay, we're going to hit continue. And again, there's just a lot of information pertaining to income. And so this is usually not going to be difficult. You're going to be able to determine if that income they received is taxable or non-taxable, or in some cases, partially taxed. And then if you you simply don't know, you go into your publication 4012 and you're kind of throwing your hands up and say, I don't know. That's when you have individuals at St. Killian's who've been doing this for years and years and years, and you'll be able to get that answer. Or in some cases, you'll call the VITA hotline and you'll ask them, hey, I'm stuck. What's the answer on this one? But typically you can find the answer. We'll talk about a lot of this stuff over the next few weeks. But what I'd like you to do, I'd like to introduce you to the other income tab. And so we're going to open that up. And the other income tab has information that you may see not on every return, but on selected returns. And we'll go through a couple things that you may bump into. You may bump into cancellation of debt. And we're going to talk about that in great detail. But this is something you want to kind of keep in the back of your mind. When you borrow money, there's no tax consequence, which means you can borrow money for a car, a house, an entertainment center, college education. You can borrow, if people want to lend you money, that borrowing money, there's no tax consequence, which means you have no taxable income. Now, if you borrow money and don't pay it back, let's say you're either unable or unwilling to pay it back, then you may have tax consequences. So for example, let's say you've got someone who comes to the VITA site and they have cancellation of debt from their credit card company. They borrowed, let's say, $20,000 and they don't pay it back for whatever reason. Well, they borrowed that money and they've spent that money on goods and services. So essentially, they've been economically enriched. And so what Congress did many, many years ago, they said, if you've got cancellation of debt, that's going to be a taxable event. And the taxpayer will be issued a 1099-C, and you're going to report that cancellation of debt on your tax return. Now, there are exceptions. You might have an individual who's what is called insolvent, which means they're upside down or they have negative net worth. And that could be an exception for the cancellation, which means it's not a taxable event. Or they've gone into United States bankruptcy court and they've had a bankruptcy judge discharge the debt that they owe. And those are two exceptions to the cancellation of debt. And again, you'll hear me use that term time and time again. You've got the general rule and then you have exceptions. And so we stick with the general rule unless there is an exception out there. So here's another tab, other income not reported. And there's a short laundry list. And so I'll give you some examples. So let's say you go to your local shopping mall and you enter some type of contest. And then they call you up and say, hey, you've won $500 in cash. Come on down and pick up your $500. Well, that would be an example of a prize or maybe an award that will be a fully taxable event. And then sometimes that prize is going to be evidenced by a 1099 MISC or some type of information return, and sometimes not. But you want to remember when you have income and it's considered taxable, you want to find a place on that tax return to put it. So we do see a lot of prizes and awards, and we also see a lot of jury duty pay. And the thing about jury duty, for those of you who've been on jury duty, it's not a high-paying job. I think you get maybe 15 or 20 bucks a day, if that. And so what happens is, at the end of your service, they're going to cut you a check, they be in the court system, and then that check, you're going to either cash it or put it in your bank account. And that's a taxable event. You're going to report that. Now, when I was a federal employee and I went on jury duty, they would give me pay. And then under federal rules, I had to go back and give that check to my secretary. So then mechanically, step number one, I'd report the jury duty pay here. And then as an adjustment to income, which is under deductions, I would report that jury duty amount that I gave to my secretary. And so essentially you have a giveth and taketh away if you're remitting your check to your employer. But if you have cashed the check, you put it in your pocket, you don't give it to anybody, that's a taxable event. And then you might have some other income, and I see this a lot in the VITA program. People will get a court settlement, they'll win $5 or maybe $5,000, and they'll say, hey, is that taxable? You're going to ask them, okay, what is it for? And then sometimes they'll have the document issued by the court. You go through the document. You don't have to be an attorney. I mean, it might help, but you can go through a court document to determine if there's a taxable amount in there, a non-taxable amount, or in some cases, maybe partially taxable. But you're going to see court settlements. And so you want to ask them, hey, what is this for? And a great publication that talks about those settlements is IRS publication 525. So again, those are some of the things that you'll see. And so we're going to cancel out of this. And we are, I think, are done with our quick introduction here. I guess one more item. We do see some of this, and this is something we'll train on in a future Zoom call. You have a concept called a K1 or a document called a K1. And what that means is, let's say you're part of a partnership, or maybe you're a shareholder in what is called an S corporation, but you're issued a K1. And so what we do is we'll look at the K1, and if it's certainly within the scope, then we'll go ahead and open that tab up and make certain entries. All right. And there's just a lot of things that we don't do in VITA. We're not trained to do it. It's outside of the scope. And you're going to get this question a lot from taxpayers. And again, you're not trying to give the taxpayer a hard time and be silly with them. You're simply going to say, we're not trained to do that. We don't do it. So for example, if you're a tax professional, you know what a net operating loss is. We don't do that in VITA. We're not trained to do it. And so that's something we simply don't do. Other things that we don't do in the VITA program, we don't prepare returns for farmers or ranchers. And so that would be this tab right here. Again, we're not trained to do it. There's a lot of things we're not trained to do. It's called out of scope. We just don't do it. Okay, so let's do this. Let's wrap this up. And so now the one tab we have to address is health insurance. So we open that up, and we're going to make this easy breezy this morning. And so everybody, you're going to ask the question, do they have health insurance, and various ways to get health insurance. If they are in covered California, what that means is they're going to be issued a form 1095A as an alpha, which means they've been subsidized by the taxpayers when they purchase their health insurance. If they are in covered California and they come to the site and they don't have a form 1095A, this is non-negotiable. You just got to tell them, we can't help you today. You've got to bring that document back because it has information we're going to enter into the software. So you've got to have this document if you're in covered California. And in this particular case, this taxpayer has insurance through their employer. And so we're going to put no, they're not in covered California or in what we call the federal exchange. The federal exchange is in many states in the United States. And then I think there's a couple, 2 or 3 states have their counterpart. California has their counterpart. And that's all under the Affordable Care Act. And that piece of legislation, it was voluminous. It was well over 1,000 pages. And the Affordable Care Act not only talks about affordable care, it has other tax provisions in it. So again, it was a monumental piece of legislation when it passed. Okay, so we put no because he's not in covered California, but he does have insurance. And we're not going to jump into the state return right now, but sometimes you are going to jump into the state returns to make certain changes or updates, and we'll show you that later. Okay, so what we're going to do before we jump back to the PowerPoint slide, we're going to show you this return summary. And AGI stands for adjusted gross income. And that simply means your total income less any adjustments that you have. And then the remainder is your adjusted gross income. And then the software shows you the federal and state. That is black in font. It has a little minus in front of it. So that means they owe the federal government $244 and they owe the state of California $202. My recommendation is when you're preparing returns, if the taxpayer says, hey, wait a second, I owe that much, I would just tell them, this is the work in progress. Let me go ahead and finish this. And then when it's all done, we'll explain if you either owe or you're going to get a refund from the federal and or state folks. Okay, let's see. So that takes care of that. Let's, I think that's it, but let me go ahead and see if I can create a 1040. Let's take a quick look at the 1040. So this is the 1040 for tax year 2022. Most likely you have seen these returns many, many times before. You have admin information up top. You do have the question regarding digital assets, cryptocurrency. And as I mentioned before, if you buy it, we can help you. If you're selling it in 2022, we can't help you. Dependents, if you have any, they'll be populated down here. And again, a dependent exemption or dependency, I should say, is associated with certain tax credits. And then you can see this is a very basic return. You've got your wage income, which is reflected on 1 alpha. That carries down to 1Z as in Zulu, and then carries down to line 9. And that's total income. And as I said before, your AGI, adjusted gross income, is defined as total income less any adjustments. We will get into the adjustments in a later Zoom session. And so when you hear AGI, that's all it is. And then everybody's entitled to some type of deduction. You can see that word or. And so this is the general rule. There's an exception to this. The general rule is you're going to take the greater of, and a lot of people will take that standard deduction. In this case, standard deduction for most people is reflected over here. For a single person, $12,950. So what that means is you got that $50,000 of AGI. The software is going to subtract that $12,950, and that will give you the taxable income amount of $37,050. And so your software is going to look at this taxable income along with the filing status to determine what is called individual income tax. So let's go back up here. We're just going to look at page 1 and 2. So you can see line 16 is the individual income tax. You will also see in the VITA program, there's other types of taxes. And you're going to see individuals who are self-employed and they have self-employment tax. But in this case, he just has individual income tax. And then it carries down here because we have no credits that offset that. And so we have total tax liability. Now, I'm like everybody else. I get excited about a refund. But in this particular case, the guy is still paying $4,244 in tax. He just happens to have withholding of $4,000, which covers most of his tax liability. So he's going to end up owing a little bit. And let's go down to that amount down here. So that's that little amount that he owes to the federal government, $244. And of course, there's different ways to pay. A lot of people don't get excited about 244, but you're going to see taxpayers that owe a couple thousand or more, and then they start getting excited. And there's different ways to pay it. You can pay it through direct debit at one of your bank accounts. You can write a check, or in some cases, the taxpayer says, I'm not going to pay it right now. I'll pay it later. But at the end of the day, they do want to pay that because the government is interested in collecting that amount. But we have information we can share with the taxpayer, kind of put them at ease. But again, some people are going to owe. All right, so that's that. I'm going to go ahead and go back to page 1, entertain any questions, and then we'll take a break.
Hey, Jerry, this is Sean. You mentioned scope of the VITA program a number of times.
Yes.
So I just wanted to point out to the folks that that scope is described in the 4012 book, which is going to be available pretty soon. It's already in the mail. We did attach an electronic copy in the chat, and it's also, you can get it through the links in Jerry's PowerPoint. Looking through it this year, the scope covers 16 pages in very small font, so it's not something you can go over real quick on an email. But
yeah, that's a good point. We will talk about scope in here. And again, when you're talking to your clients, your VITA clients, sometimes you're going to say, wait a second, you're going to go to that scope chart and you're going to say, hey, this is out of scope. So the more you know about out of scope, you can tell the taxpayer straight away, I'm sorry, we are not trained to do that. The VITA program has rules and protocols. Your return is out of scope. And of course, it begs the question, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? And we'll talk about that. But typically you say, well, we can't help you here. There may be another site, but typically you're going to have to go out in town and find yourself a tax professional. And yes, it is frustrating for the taxpayer because they want to get their return done. But at the end of the day, if it's out of scope, we don't help them. Okay, Sean, any questions that we can address?
Clay right here. So how frequently do we actually see returns that are out of scope? Like somebody that's got net operating loss or has sold off crypto or something like that. How frequent?
You know, it probably depends on a lot of different factors, but it happens. It certainly will happen, you know, a couple times a day where someone will come in, they'll slip through the interview process, and then someone's looking at their information and say, hey, we can't help you. This is out of scope. But it does happen a couple times a session. I know at my VITA site, Coastline College, every session that we're open, it happens at least once or twice. And I have to sit down with the taxpayer and say, out of scope. And then again, there's frustration from the taxpayer. And then we just explain there's different ways you can get assistance, but you can't get assistance here. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Follow-up question on that. It sounds like in the interview process, we weed out most people that would not qualify. So we're not spending a lot of time with somebody and then halfway through find out that they sold crypto cash or whatever.
Yes, that's typically what happens. But as my former boss used to say, in a perfect world, that's what happens. But when you're conducting VITA operations and what happens, things do, for lack of a better term, they do slip through. And then the preparer is looking at something and says, hey, wait a second, this is out of scope. We cannot assist you. But yes, that's why it's critical that interview process, that greeter, the greeter sometimes does the interview, but the interview process, that's where you want to catch it. And so what I do on my site, I have some very experienced people who are interviewers or greeters, and then that way we're able to address it right off the bat and not an hour later. Okay, any other questions before we take our break?
I was wondering about the student loan interest deduction program. How are we going to proceed with that this year? Because that's now back online.
Yes, as far as I know, when you have a student loan, and there's different types of student loans, you have a private loan, you have a federally insured student loan, you have a government loan from the federal government. And if you're paying interest on the loan, and a lot of people have, then that's something you're going to be issued an information return. And then you're going to jump in the software and you're going to indicate student loan interest paid. And for our VITA clients, they're going to get up to an adjustment of up to $2,500. If you're talking about someone who's making a lot of income, then there's a phase out provision. And you're going to hear that term phase out also in the program. As you make more money, certain credits are phased out and eventually they go away. All right, anyone else? Okay, Sean, I've got 11:07. Let's come back at 11:17.
Sounds great. We are recording.
Okay. All right, welcome back. So now we're going to jump into the topic of the 4012, and this particular resource guide. This is your go-to document when you're at the VITA site, and certainly when you're taking those certifications to become a certified volunteer. This document changes every year. The IRS spends an enormous amount of time. They get together a lot of IRS employees and some contractors, and what the IRS does is they will revise this document every single year. And it's a rather thick document. It's the size of if you remember phone books, a small phone book. And the tax year 2023 has been published. It's on the street. As far as getting a hard copy, Sean, the site coordinator, has talked about getting that delivered in some form or fashion. If you're working at Coastline College, for me, we give you that document when you show up as a volunteer. And again, it's a very, very well written document. A lot of people put their hearts and soul into it. And again, it's probably one of the best IRS documents you can see. It's user friendly. It's written in plain language. And again, it's very useful when you're at the VITA site. So let's do this. Let's jump into the 4012 and give you a quick introduction to that document. So let's do that. And then Sean, can you let me know if you can see the 4012 displayed?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So again, this is a document that is your go-to document. You'll have the hard copy at the site, and it is filled with information pertaining to income, credits, deductions, utilizing the software, and there's some helpful hints. So let's go ahead and talk about a few things here. First page talks about the volunteer standards of conduct. And just like any organization, whether you're a student at a university or a professor at a university, there are standards of conduct. And if you don't adhere to them, then of course there are consequences. Thankfully, in the VITA program, the vast majority of our volunteers are doing the right thing. And so we typically don't have an issue. But let's take a quick look at these before we move on to our next page. So you have to follow site requirements, which we're going to get into. This is a program where it's free for the taxpayer, so we don't accept a donation. Now, sometimes your taxpayers will come in with maybe a couple of dozen of cookies that they've baked, and they give it to the site coordinator for all of the volunteers. That's not an issue. But if someone comes in, like we had a site one time where the site coordinator accepted $100 cash for tax preparation, we don't do that. That's something that it's a free service, so we're not going to get donations. You're not soliciting business. This has happened to me probably 50 times where people find out that I'm a tax guy, and they go, "Hey, can you help me out with my taxes?" And the answer is, "Sure, I can help you out with your taxes here if you qualify, but I'm not gonna troll for business as a tax guy because we don't solicit business at the VITA site." Preparing a false return, again, it doesn't happen. If you make mistakes, and everybody will, what that means is typically the individual will have to file an amended return. But I think we had one case that happened maybe about 10 years ago where a VITA volunteer intentionally prepared a false return. That's something that we can't tolerate. So that person was let go, and they're not part of the program anymore. And then you want to behave, and so that means this is the tax return, and you want to make sure you prepare it to the best of your ability. And of course, we treat our clients as best we can. So you act professionally and respectful. Now, if you have a client who's not acting respectful or professionally, then usually it's a discussion between the client and the site coordinator. And in some circumstances, and it doesn't happen very often, sometimes we just have to ask the taxpayer, "Hey, you got to leave. You're causing a commotion. You're not behaving, so we have to ask you to leave." That happens once in a blue moon, and again, the site coordinator will attend to that. Okay, so that's the volunteer site requirements. This is your table of contents. It's a busy, busy, busy publication. So we're going to focus on a couple things. You can see tab A, where it says who must file. And anybody who comes to the VITA site, typically they want to file a return. Now it's up to your site coordinator. Sometimes people show up at the site and they do not have a filing requirement, but they want to file a return. Maybe they're going to get a refund. Maybe they're just used to filing returns. Now at my site, if someone shows up and wants to file the return and they're in scope, we'll file the return for them. And sometimes they say, well, I'm not getting a refund or I don't owe anything. That's correct. It's basically a paper drill, but it depends on your site. Now, Sean, if I can call on you, you think you're going to prepare any returns for folks who do not have a filing requirement?
If they come to our site, we will file it for them.
Okay.
We have a pretty high goal from the IRS. So,
okay. And I've met a lot of, especially seniors, you know, you've got seniors that have been preparing returns for 50 years. And I've had people sit across the desk from me and say, Jerry, it doesn't matter if I have a filing requirement or not. I want to file a return. And we say, okay, we'll do that. So again, in your tab, it talks about who must file. There are certain people who have a filing requirement, and that's generally based on what is called gross income, age of the individual, and filing status. And then, of course, you have people who have to file. They must file. And so, for example, let's say you've got a young adult. They're 30 years old. They've left their job, and they've taken a 401 distribution of, let's say $20,000. And there's going to be some tax withheld. That's going to be a filing requirement. And then we talk about filing statuses. And you can see that 13614C there. That is the intake and interview sheet, and that's used on every single return. And then, of course, these are hyperlinked. And Sean, keep me honest here. I'm going to hyperlink to starting a return. And can you see where it says tab B?
yep, it's on tab
Okay.
B.
And so if you're using the electronic version, you know, the hyperlink is going to help out. And it looks like I've lost it. So let's do this. Let me go back. And let me reload that. So give me just a quick second here. Any questions while we reload this, Sean?
I don't see any questions in the chat. Does anybody have questions?
Okay. All right, let me see if I can find that again. Here we go. We're back to the 4012. You should see that now, Sean.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, so let's look at a couple more things. Again, this is your go-to document. I use this during the season. I use it, of course, to certify. I use it at my VITA site. I have it sitting next to me, and I open this thing up, not for every return, but for a number of returns. And then all of my volunteers will utilize this. And so again, this is where you're going to go. Dependents, we talk a little bit about dependents today, but there's a whole tab on that. Income, this is one of your biggest tabs because there's a lot of different types of income sources. And simply because someone has income doesn't mean that's taxable income. So for example, if you borrow money, that's income. But of course, there's no tax consequences to borrowing money. If you receive a gift from your grandmother for $20,000, and let's say it happens to be cash, that's income, but that's a non-taxable source of income. And so that's what you're going to be doing at the VITA site, determining taxable sources, non-taxable sources, or in some cases, partially taxed. So you see that income section, just a lot of information. We do prepare the capital gain when you sell a home. And so if you have a personal residence and you sell it, and let's say you're moving, and then you enjoy some type of capital gain, that's something we do at the VITA site. Of course, you do have to ask a lot of questions. A document you're going to see at the VITA site a lot of, and that would be an information return known as a 1099 R's and Romeo. And that would be for a retirement plan of some kind. It would be for an IRA distribution, a 401k distribution, different types of distributions. Simplified method, we're going to talk about that, but when you hear that term, what that means is someone has been in a retirement plan, they've made contributions to that retirement plan, and so they have what is called a cost or basis in the plan. And so we're going to show you how to go through that to determine the amount of taxable income that someone receives from their retirement. We have a lot of Social Security recipients, and we'll have that 1099 that's received, the SSA 1099 from the Social Security recipient. We already talked about the K-1s. We'll get into that later. This is an information return that you're going to see a lot of. It's a 1099 MISC miscellaneous, and that's issued for various reasons. And in some cases, somebody will receive this, and it may be a non-taxable event. And again, we're going to get into that determination, what's taxed, what's not taxed. That's that cancellation we talked about, cancellation of debt. Adjustments to income. These are the ones that you're going to see probably a couple times each session. You're going to see individuals with educator expenses, and those are going to be your K through 12 instructors that purchase supplies for the kids in the classroom, and there's a limit there. Things that you will not see at the VITA site. If you're not military certified and you do not have a military VITA client, you will not have moving expenses. That does not pertain to taxpayers unless they're military folks.
Jerry, I missed that. Can you go back to where you were saying cost basis and qualified accounts? What line was that?
You're talking about a qualified account?
Yeah, that had a cost basis in it.
Oh, that would be your what is called your simplified method.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, just a little VITA story. A number of years ago, we had someone preparing a return, and the taxpayer had a lot of basis in their retirement. And the return was prepared. The bill was shared with the taxpayer. The guy owed like $8,000 in tax. I came upon the scene. We asked a few questions, and we made a determination he had basis in his pension. And I said, "Hey, can you provide some documents?" So he went home, he got them, and then we were able to complete that simplified method worksheet. And he did not owe $8,000 in tax. He owed like maybe $1,000 or $2,000. Okay, another thing we see at the VITA site, not a lot of, but you see enough of it, is alimony. And for those recent divorces, you know, like 2000, 2021, alimony is not reported as a taxable item for a recent divorce, and neither is alimony paid as a deduction. So you're going to see that. Here's that student loan interest deduction somebody asked about. And then we do get into the itemized deductions, and approximately 10% of your taxpayers are going to have a Schedule A. And this is a laundry list of items that Congress has come up with that appear on the Schedule A. And most of the time, if you have someone who has interest that they're paying to a mortgage company on their house, typically they're going to be itemizing their deductions. And then we get into charitable contributions in a big way. When you hear that term, it has to be a qualified charitable organization. For example, St. Killian's is a qualified organization. The Red Cross is qualified. Goodwill is qualified. There are organizations out there who represent themselves as a charity and they're not qualified. And so we're going to get into that. And then we spend a lot of time talking about federal and California credits. And the credits can either be non-refundable or they can be refundable. And when you hear the term non-refundable, it simply means it's a dollar for dollar reduction of the tax. Remember that individual income tax. Well, before you get down to the total tax liability, if they qualify for a non-refundable credit, it's a dollar for dollar reduction of the tax. Now, when you hear the term refundable credit, that means it doesn't matter if they owe or not, they're going to get money back. And probably the big refundable credit would be tab, let's see, that's tab HI, that's tab is in India, the earned income tax credit. A lot of our a lot of our clients, a lot of clients are eligible for the federal earned income tax credit. There is also a California earned income tax credit. And then, as I said many times before, when you're talking about the federal government and the state of California, let's say the federal government's a dog and California is a state. California is a cat. And so what that means is you have the Internal Revenue Code and federal legislation that appears to or applies to federal returns. And then you have the Revenue and Taxation Code that applies to California returns. So it's completely two different animals. You're going to get that question. People are going to say, well, why don't I get this in my California return? And you would say, well, that's easy. California is a cat, federal government's a dog. It's two different systems. Education benefits, we talk about that a lot in VITA because people are going to college, whether it's community college or a four-year college, whether it's a private college or a public college. When we go through these education benefits, the key term you want to focus in on is out-of-pocket education expenses. And so if someone's going to school and they're pulling money out of their bank account or out of their pocket to pay for tuition, they may be eligible, they may qualify for one of those education benefits. And we talk about that. And then there's a whole section talking about using the TaxSlayer Pro software. And then you've got partner resources. That most likely is going to be something your site coordinator is going to get into. And then your administration. This is something most likely your site coordinator and your electronic return originator is going to get into. Rejected returns, probably not a concern for most volunteers, but returns are rejected for various reasons, and you don't get excited about it. All you do as the site coordinator or the electronic return originator, you simply perfect the return, which means sometimes you got to call the taxpayer and say, hey, what's your social again? Prove to me your social because I got a reject code that your social security number didn't go through. And that's one reason why we asked for that social security card. Okay, and so let's go back to the top here and see if we have any general questions regarding the 4012.
If I'm working with St. Killian's, am I required to go down and pick up the hard copy 4012, or can I just keep it on my
I guess the short answer is you're not required to have a hard copy. You can certainly have a soft copy on your computer. I know a lot of people take their personal computers. I highly recommend that you get a hard copy because what happens is you're going to start taking, like my 4012 is packed with notes that I have written in because sometimes you'll have a decision that's made in January of 2024 which doesn't apply to the 4012 that appears in front of you. So yeah, that's what I would recommend. But if you choose to use the electronic version, you're good to go. That meets one of the requirements.
For my situation, I'm partially blind in my right eye. And so anything below like a 12 font is almost painful for me to read. And so I'm thinking I can use I can use the electronic and blow it up like you're doing right here.
Yeah, so let me jump in on this. We actually are encouraging people to use the electronic if they're comfortable with that. And one of the reasons is the IRS just gets more and more limited every year on what they're willing to print for us. They're still printing the 4012s. We will always have copies of the 4012 at the VITA site. But more and more documents are just electronic, and that's the only way you can get them. So it's just better that people start getting used to that.
So I'll probably reach out to you offline.
Yeah, that saves a lot of time and trouble. I typically have my 4012 in a hard copy version, and then I will sometimes have the instructions of the Form 1040. But either way, because it's whether it's paper or electronic, it's a document that you're going to refer to. And again, the 4012 has hyperlinks, which definitely helps you out. Okay, Sean, I think that's it for the 4012 for now. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint presentation. We'll run through the rest of this. Okay, so the volunteer standards of conduct, that's in that document I just showed you. These are the volunteer standards of conduct that we ran through. And so again, you want to make sure that you adhere to these rules. And if there's any issues that pop up and you're not sure, if you just go to your site coordinator and you say, hey, can I do this? Like, so for example, at my site at Coastline College, we have people who've been visiting there for 8 or 9 years, and they come in with a big tray of donuts. And so, no, I don't push people out of the way and grab the tray and run away. But what I do, I say, okay, hey, thank you. And then we share it with all of the preparers. But again, we don't take any money, and we're not going to, troll for business. If you're a insurance salesman or a stockbroker or a tax preparer, you don't do that. And then you do your best to treat them respectfully, or like my boss used to say, with dignity and respect. And sometimes you just got to tell them, hey, we can't help you here. Here are some options. If you give people options when it comes to tax preparation, they're usually going to walk out and they're going to be fairly satisfied there's a way to get this done, even though for whatever reason we can't prepare the return. When you hear about the quality site requirements, we'll just run through these. Your site coordinator is gonna definitely keep up on this. You have to be certified. And so again, basic certification is your first line. I highly recommend, and this is up to Sean, but I highly recommend you get advanced certified, because it's kind of frustrating when you're ready to review a return and someone says, well, I'm only basic certified. Oh, I got to find someone who's advanced. So at my site, everybody is advanced plus military, so we don't have that issue, but you got to be certified. And then you're going to use the intake and interview sheet. And then a lot of times, and St. Killian's does this, they have yet another sheet that's used. So in addition to the intake form that the IRS publishes, the 13614C, St. Killian's has a local sheet, if you will. We confirm ID, and we also confirm their identification number. Typically, that's a Social Security number. Sometimes it's an individual taxpayer identification number. And sometimes for kids, it's an adoption identification number. Reference materials, IRS wants you to use reference material. Again, if you choose to use it electronically, you've got it on your computer, couple clicks and you got it. The volunteer agreement, that means Sean, the site coordinator, is going to retain a copy. Sometimes it's electronic, sometimes it's a hard copy. I have a binder, and I ask my volunteers to send me their agreement. I print it out, put it in the binder, so I have all the agreements there. Timely filing a return, this is not an issue for the VITA volunteer per se, but it's definitely an issue for the electronic return originator and the site coordinator. So what that means is when a return is prepared, the site wants to submit that to the IRS, usually within the next business day. If I remember correctly, it's within a couple of days, but you don't want to hold on to a batch of returns and e-file them 2 or 3 weeks later. That's a no-no. And then civil rights, there's a poster that the coordinator is going to post. We don't discriminate in this program, again, against taxpayers based on their national origin, their race or religion, or age. Now, we do discriminate if someone comes to the site and they are outside of the scope, which means, let's say you got someone showing up and they have W-2 income of $100,000. They got a net operating loss. They're a farmer, and then yes, you would discriminate. Discriminate in a good way, saying, "Man, we can't help you outside of the scope," but otherwise, we take all comers. The site identification number. Every site has a number that's assigned by the IRS. And then what happens is the IRS will track that site and the number of returns that are prepared. And so that's going to be entered into the software by Sean or one of his folks, and it'll populate on every single return. And then the electronic filing identification number, the EFIN, every site has an EFIN. Usually it's just one EFIN assigned to the site, and it's used by the site. And then security, your documents, they have sensitive information. Some people use the term sensitive or PII, personal identified information. So we keep that under lock and key. We don't put it on a table and walk away. It's under lock and key, or it's in the software protected by a password. So those are the quality site requirements. All right, any questions about the ethics or the requirements? Okay, moving on. We've already talked about the scope of service, and we'll revisit that time and time again, but this is something you got to remember. If you're a tax person, a tax professional, you know that the tax world is a very, very big world. You've got gift tax returns, you've got trust returns, partnership returns, corporate returns, you've got the 1040 NRs, you got the 1040. All we do in the VITA program is basic tax preparation. And that's all we're trained for. And so again, you're going to get the question time and time again, why can't you help me? Well, the answer is very simple. We're not trained to help you because you've got a complicated return, or you've got a return that we have no training in. And so that means you're going to have to go somewhere else to get that assistance. And somewhere else could include a California Tax Education Council registered tax preparer, an enrolled agent, a CPA, or if they qualify, they can go to a low-income tax clinic, which is typically staffed by tax professionals, including attorneys. And the closest one is in the city of Orange, Chapman University. And they either prepare returns for free or for a reduced price. And that's another option they can use. And when you talk about the low income tax clinic, in addition to preparing returns, you might have a tax issue. Maybe you're under representation, or maybe you're going to go to tax court, or maybe you're under collections, all sorts of issues. And that's what a low income tax clinic can help you out. But simply because it says low income, it doesn't mean it's free. Sometimes they will charge a modest amount for taxpayers. And when you're talking about a tax professional, I get this question all the time. Hey, Jerry, what do you charge? And the answer is it depends. I charge anywhere from $250 for a tax return, or in some cases, very complex returns, $15,000. And so again, it's all over the board, but we only do basic tax returns in the VITA program because that's all we're trained for.
Barry, on this section right here, so if we encounter somebody that's outside of the scope for our voluntary service, can we give a direct referral to a tax professional, or is it like, hey, you just gotta go, you just gotta go find an enrolled agent or a CPA that can help you with this?
Yeah, what you want to do is you don't want to give them, I know a guy out in town, Fred Flintstone, you don't want to do that. But what you can do is you can say, you can go to the CTEC website where there are thousands of tax preparers who are signed up, and you can go into that site and you can find a preparer in your local area. Same thing with the California Society of Enrolled Agents. You can look up an enrolled agent in your area. CPA, they've got a roster, if you will. So yeah, you can do that. For example, I belong to the California Society of Tax Consultants, and we have thousands and thousands of tax preparers who belong to that society. And so when someone says at the VITA site, Jerry, where do I go? Well, you have some options. One option is you can go to the California Society of Tax Consultants. You can put in your zip code or your city, and you get a laundry list of preparers who are part of that society. And then you can pick one in your town or in your county, and that's acceptable.
Jerry, what about that low income tax clinic you have listed? Can we refer people to that?
These are nationwide. Now, they're not in every city. They receive federal funding. but this is the local one. And so, like, for example, I had a taxpayer, she had every issue that you could think of. And I mean, it was a basket of snakes. And I said, okay, what you need is you need probably an enrolled agent, an accountant, an attorney, and maybe all three. And they've got to resolve your many, many issues. And so you probably want to go to a low income tax clinic, expecting that you may pay a modest amount for that assistance.
Thanks.
Does that help? Does that help you out, Sean?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, all right. So again, there are options, and I recognize some people can't pay, you know, $500 for a tax preparation, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own return, and if it doesn't qualify for the VITA program, then you've got to pick another way. I actually had a client, or I should say, a VITA client, and she said, "Hey, I can't afford any of this stuff." I said, "Well, then another option for you is you could self-educate and prepare your own return." She actually ended up doing that. And that's, again, yet another option. But you don't want to take the bait when someone says, "Hey, please help me." The answer is outside of the scope. We can't help you. The rules and protocol, we can't do it. But you have options. And there are preparers out there that prepare tax returns. We're talking tax professionals for free. And that means they have a pro bono client base, and that means they prepare returns for free for certain individuals. You got to find them, though. You got to find them. Okay, let's get into, now you don't have to write this stuff down, but we'll talk about some of this stuff. There's just a laundry list of publications, and some of them you may take a look at, others you may do the deep dive. And so the 4299 talks about privacy. Well, when you talk about the tax world, people are giving you all sorts of information: when they got divorced, when they had a baby, their social security number, all of the information. So we keep this stuff, we being the VITA folks, we keep it private. And there's a whole publication that talks about that, to include civil rights. And again, there's a poster that's published, and we don't discriminate. So if somebody walks in, let's say they don't speak English, we're going to help them out as best we can. The training guide, I have to confess, I don't use this very often. Doesn't mean it's not a bad guide, but the 4491 is a training guide that can be used by your site coordinator, or if you need additional training, but I personally don't use it. The 5088, this is the site coordinator training. Keep in mind, even though Sean is a coordinator, he will designate an assistant site coordinator, and then maybe even a second assistant site coordinator. What I do at my site is, I'm the site coordinator, I've got an assistant, and then I've got a third person, and they all go through the training. And then that way, when I'm out of the building for an hour, someone else pops up and says, "Okay, I'm the site coordinator, I can take care of these issues." Something that's, it's not necessarily new, but it's newer, and it's the over-the-phone interpreter. And if you've ever had a taxpayer who needs help in a different language, I got to tell you, this is a great service. We've used this. We also have American Sign Language, but this particular program has 114 languages. So chances are your taxpayer who walks in who speaks Mandarin, Chinese, Russian, Albanian, Spanish, whatever the case is, you'll be able to reach out and utilize that IRS service for over-the-phone interpreter services. This is also a level of certification in 2023. Most likely your site coordinator will certify on that. But it's a great thing if you want to help someone out, which we all do, but we don't speak their language and they don't speak our language. So instead of getting frustrated, you just call that particular interpreter and utilize that service. It's a great service. I've used it before, and of course, if you have someone in your program who speaks the language, then you can, of course, bring them to your table, sit them down, and they can be the interpreter. You can also have the son or the daughter of the taxpayer who speaks the language in English to be the interpreter. So there's ways to do it. Okay, some more information. The filing season, the 5358 talks about the training and the site materials. That's a reference document. You've got a handbook for VITA, partners and site coordinators. And then you also have a intake handbook. And that's new this year. One thing about this VITA program, when it first started, there were just a few publications, and now there's a laundry list of them. I guess that would be typical government, more and more documents being written and published. The 6744, Sean mentioned this. This is really important. Again, I highly recommend before you take that certification in Link and Learn and enter all your data electronically and hit submit, my recommendation is get the 6744, and it's going to ask you test questions, which are going to be very similar to what you're going to see on the electronic test. That gives you an opportunity to look up the answers to the question in your 4012, and then you write all that down in your 6744. And then when you take the certification, you're simply plugging in the answers, and then you're going to hit submit. It's going to go real quick. And then, of course, you have a document with questions and answers. So I think it's real helpful. I use it every year. I get the hard copy, and I do it that way. And then I look at the answers in the 4012, the ones that I don't know off the top of my head. Another publication which is useful, you probably have seen it if you've done taxes over the years, is the publication 17. This is for individual returns, the Form 1040 and the 1040 SR. This has information pertaining to income, expenses, and deductions. And then what the publication 17 does, it will refer you to other IRS publications. And so I think one time I asked one of my students in my class, hey, how many IRS publications there are? And the student says, Jerry, there are many, many publications. And they were right. There are many publications, and some of them you'll never hear of, you'll never see, and others you'll drill down and you'll find them, and they'll be helpful in your tax preparation. Another document which I find to be very helpful, this is issued every year, it's updated every year along with the 17, are the instructions to the Form 1040, your basic tax return. The instructions, of course, have the new tax law in it. They also have information pertaining to a tax table. So I've had individuals, when we prepare the return electronically, they would ask me, how do you know that's right? I said, well, I'm going to conclude that the software guys and gals inputted all the stuff correctly. But if you want to go ahead and check it, let's go to this instruction booklet to the Form 1040, and we will look at your taxable income and your filing status to determine the amount of the individual income tax. I've done that a couple times, and then the taxpayer says, okay, I guess your thing's correct. Your software is correct. It is. Now, here's something else. Usually your software is correct. Sometimes your software is going to be incorrect. And when that happens, IRS will issue a basically information. It'll come down through your site coordinator that the software guys and gals are trying to fix that. That happens every once in a while. I think over the years I've used TaxSlayer. I think I've found maybe 5 or 6 mistakes. So I just called the company direct and said, hey, can you have your folks fix this? You've got your software folks. Would you go ahead and address this? So it does happen every once in a while. And then here's another thing. The instructions have the earned income tables. And so the earned income tables refer to that earned income tax credit. And of course, it depends on a couple of factors to determine the amount of your earned income tax credit. And then keep in mind, when you're talking about a tax return, individual return, you either file the 1040 or your software will generate the 1040 SR based on your age. So you're not going to get both. You're going to get one or the other. The 1040 SR is for your seniors, 65 or older, larger font when you print out the PDF. But again, it is a tax return. Okay, and then let's see here. Let's go to our draft. Actually, we'll just introduce you to this. When you're talking about your tax returns, it changes every year. I think it basically gets a little bit more complicated each year. I know at one point the 1040 so-called postcard, but of course that so-called postcard that came out a few years ago, what that meant is certain lines were stripped away from the 1040, and then the IRS generated a Schedule 1, a Schedule 2, and a Schedule 3. So I don't think it was simplification. I think it was just a matter of switching lines from the 1040 to the Schedule 1, 2, and 3. But the draft 1040 is out if you want to take a look at it. It's publicly available. And by no means do you use that to file a return. It's just a reference document. And then what happens is the IRS will publish the 1040, and it will not have the word draft on it. The supplement that we talked about, the 4491, again, I don't use it. I'm not saying it's a bad document. I just don't use it. The 4491X is a training supplement, and you're going to have information pertaining to essentially updates in the tax law, if you will, and software updates. So that comes out, your site coordinator will share that with you. When you're going to take that ethics test, the volunteer standards of conduct, again, think about any test you've ever taken, whether in kindergarten or getting your PhD. There's material, there's a book, there's a magazine, there's some type of reference information where you're going to read it, you're going to learn, and then you're going to go and tackle the test. Well, the same thing in the VITA program. There is a 4961, which is embedded in the Lincoln Learn program, and then that's the document you want to review. Now, what I do is I typically look at the first couple pages and good enough for me, and then I jump into the ethics test. Same thing with the intake and interview sheet, the 5101, that's embedded in Lincoln Learn. And this intake sheet is revised every year. In fact, the intake sheet for 2023, tax year 2023, has been published. And we are going to spend a little bit of time going through the intake sheet. And then you also heard about what are called alternative filing models. We use a face-to-face method or model at St. Killian's, but there's other methods. We also have a drop-off method, which means taxpayers will drop off typically copies of their tax information, and then our preparers will prepare a return. A taxpayer comes back, and this is something that every taxpayer will sign. It's called the IRS Form 8879, and that's the e-file authorization. There's also a California 8879, so your taxpayers sign that document, and that gives permission to the electronic return originator to electronically file the return. But again, there are different models. Like, for example, at Coastline, we used a model a few years ago where we used a program called Lisio, which is a secure document platform. All of the documents were uploaded to Lisio. We conducted Zoom interviews with our clients, and then we prepared returns electronically, and then we posted the returns in Lisio, and then the clients downloaded them, signed the 8879, and then we e-filed. But different methods, but typically, unless Sean, you have something different, we'll be doing face-to-face, and then most likely also the drop-off method.
That's right, Jerry. We'll do face-to-face, and then towards the end of the day, we'll do some drop-offs.
Oh, I can barely hear you, Sean.
I said we'll probably primarily do face-to-face, but towards the end of the day, there may be some drop-offs.
Yeah, and that's real handy. Like, for example, at Coastline, what we do is we have face-to-face, and people come in and they can't wait for a couple hours, because sometimes it is a couple hours. So we said, all right, make copies of your documents, drop them off with a completed intake and interview sheet, and then come back next week and we'll give you your return. Okay, so what we're going to do here before we jump into the 13614C, to give you a quick intro, and then we'll take a break and come back. So the 13614C is the intake and interview, and also it's used by the quality reviewer. So this is the important thing. It's used for every single tax return. And yes, it does take a little bit of time for the taxpayer to complete it. And various sites, to include St. Killian, they also use a local information sheet, and that the IRS says that's permissible. And what happens is the taxpayer will complete the intake sheet, volunteer will perfect it, they'll ask follow-up questions, And then the quality reviewer is going to review not only the intake and interview sheet, but also the return that's been prepared. And then once a quality reviewer gives a thumbs up to the preparer, everything's okay, then the return then is printed out by the preparer. A copy is given to the taxpayer for their records. And again, the taxpayer then signs the IRS and the California Form 8879, and that's for the electronic filing. And then even though we don't use 23 languages at St. Killian's, there's a number of languages that I've seen at St. Killian's and some other sites. Typically, you're going to see some Spanish, some Chinese speakers, mostly Mandarin. I don't see a lot of Cantonese Chinese speakers, but mostly Mandarin. Vietnamese at my site, probably about 25% of my taxpayers are Vietnamese speaking. So there's a 13614C for them. And then Farsi, there's different types of Farsi. This would be Farsi spoken in Iran. And so again, different languages. If you want a language that's not represented here on the screen, you talk to your site coordinator, you can go to the IRS website and you can download another one. And again, it's very comfortable because someone comes in, they don't speak English. We don't want to chase them away. We want to help them out. And that intake and interview sheet in a different language is going to help them out. And then, of course, if you have someone at your site who speaks one of these languages, they're worth their weight in gold. And if they're trained in taxes, even more so, because they're able to communicate with the taxpayer. And again, sometimes you're going to reach out to that interpreter service, or sometimes you're going to grab that adult child and sit them down, and they speak the language, and so they'll help you out. But there's usually a way to help people out who speak a different language. And like my mom, she English was not her first language. In fact, for that matter, English is not my first language. But you find people to help out, and that's the whole idea behind VITA. So we can find someone. Okay, any questions before we take our break? You got anything, Sean?
No, Jerry. Looks like there's no questions.
Okay, then let's do this. I've got 12:04. Let's come back at 12:14. We'll jump into the intake sheet and finish up the rest of our presentation.
A football game? 4, 6.
And Sean, can you see the intake and interview sheet?
Yes, Jerry, I see the intake sheet.
Okay, great. All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a quick introduction to this intake and interview and quality review sheet. This is a document that your taxpayers are going to complete when they either come to the VITA site, or sometimes they're going to prepare that in advance before they come to the VITA site. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, October 2023. So this is for tax year 2023. You can see that administrative information at the very top. And again, we're looking for not a nickname, but the name that appears on their Social Security card. And we do help out individuals in the VITA program who are not U.S. citizens. And so we've got resident aliens, we've got undocumented individuals. And so we want to make we want them to provide that information, whatever the case is. Date of birth is important because that goes into the software. And again, the Social Security database is queried. So we need the correct name, we need the correct social, and the correct date of birth. Other information, whether or not they're a student, and we're talking about a student at a college, if they're legally blind. And we're going to talk about a tax definition of legal blindness. And then, of course, if they can be claimed as a dependent, and that would be based on that information you find in publication 4012. You also have individuals that had their identity stolen. And when your identity is stolen, it's unpleasant. But what you can do, you can get an identity protection personal identification number, IPPIN, issued to you. IRS will send you a letter. And when they have that letter, the taxpayer wants to bring that in, because what that means is we can prepare the return and we can e-file it, even though their identity has been compromised. And then, of course, we capture a email address for the individual, because sometimes we have to follow up when we want to perfect the return. Filing status is important, probably the one here. You'll have individuals who have lost their spouse, so we want to capture the month, the day, and the year that the spouse has passed away, and then we can file. For example, tax year 2023. Let's say your taxpayer lost their spouse. If they choose to, and generally they do, in tax year 2023, they want to file a married filing joint return. The surviving spouse, of course, would sign for the decedent. So you want to capture that. Some people, when you ask them, are they married? They kind of look up in the ceiling and they start daydreaming. And what that means is they do not have the final decree from the court. So let's say they file for divorce from their spouse in Rhode Island, and they haven't been back to Rhode Island in a long time. They have to call the clerk of the court and say, hey, am I divorced? And if I am, can I get that document from the judge? That does happen. I've seen that probably at least a couple dozen times when you ask them straight away, are you married? And they go, I don't know. So you have to follow up on that.
Hey, Jerry, can I
next,
cut in?
Go ahead.
When you were mentioning the tax identity PIN, I just wanted to point out that the IRS said that was one of the top reasons for rejects last year is we've got to ask every customer because some people forget that they applied for one in a previous year. Once you get one of those, you're going to get a new PIN every year from the IRS.
Thank you, Sean. And then another thing about that, when you have a return that's rejected, this is my policy at my site. Once there's a rejection, we'll attempt to perfect it. We will not spend weeks and weeks and weeks perfecting it. Usually we'll give it 2 times. When we can't perfect it, I'll call the taxpayer and say, taxpayer, we cannot perfect your return. We cannot e-file your return. Make a photocopy of that return that I gave you and mail it in to the federal and state government. We cannot assist you at this point. We just can't keep going back and back. Okay, down here, this is for your dependents. Again, dependents, you're talking about some type of credit that's associated with a dependent. Typically, your dependents are going to be minor children. Typically, they're going to be under 18. However, if you got someone going to college and you meet all the tests, they can be your dependent. And in some cases, your parents can be your dependent if you're supporting them. And then over on the left hand, I stand corrected, the right hand side, which says to be completed by a certified volunteer preparer. This is, it looks like it's gray in color. I'm kind of colorblind, so I think it's gray in color. And this is the follow-up that needs to be done by a volunteer preparer. And then you get into page 2, and you can see where it says at the very top, income. And then it uses the letter B as in Bravo, A as in Alpha, M as in Mike. So B means a basic certification, A means an advanced certification, and M means a military certification. So these are all of the questions that are asked. And you're going to see these 13614Cs where the taxpayer marks unsure, not sure. You ask somebody, hey, did they receive tip income? They don't understand what the term tip income means. So you perfect that return, you perfect the document, you explain the term to the individual, define the term, and then you move on. But you're going to get some unsures, and so you just want to perfect that. Have that quick interview, that conversation with the taxpayer. And you can see the laundry list of income items. And again, not all income is considered taxable, but we're looking for those taxable items that go on a return. And then this is something 15, you're going to see a lot of this. You're going to see a lot of people winning prizes, awards. They're going to be on jury duty. And for some reason, there's a lot of gamblers in the VITA program, i.e. clients who've gambled, whether it be California lottery, they go to Vegas, whatever the case is. And that's part of other income.
Hey,
Yes,
Jerry, can I
yeah.
get you to close your left screen, your left panel, to give a better view of the shared screen for full screen?
Well, I'll try to click on it and I'll see if I can make it go away, but I don't think I'm smart enough to make that go away right now.
Actually,
So,
if you could just drag it over to the left then a little bit.
let me try that.
Yeah, because I'm getting a partial screen. It could be, I mean, I've got a 15-inch, monitor, but it's like I'm only seeing a partial page of what you're discussing, but that's fine if you can't.
Yeah, that might be a bridge too far. So, so your request is denied. Okay, here we go. Next one, expenses. You have a lot of expenses, and these are items that typically go into adjustments. You're going to have that student loan interest where people pay, and they're typically going to be issued an information return called the 1098E as an echo. And that's another important thing. When you're at the site, you're looking for documentation. Sometimes you're going to get information from the interview, but you're also looking for documents. And typically, yeah, you can look at items on an electronic device, but typically they're going to give you a piece of paper with information on it. And alimony, we already talked about that. College, going to college, all of these Schedule A expenses, we'll talk about that next week. And so again, these are the things that are going to provide you with, or they're going to check yes or no if it applies to them. If they check unsure, you're going to go ahead and perfect that. Life events, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter if you're short or tall, old or young, doesn't matter. You have a life event. You got a baby that's born, you got someone who passes away, you get fired from your job, you get hired from a job, you buy something, you sell something. And so that's what these life events are. And these life events may have tax consequences. So for example, you got a credit card and you either are unable or unwilling to pay it, you might have cancellation of debt. That would be a life event. Here's another thing I see more and more of in the VITA program. Individuals who make estimated tax payments. Typically, this is for self-employed individuals, i.e. someone who has a Schedule C as in Charlie. But if you are, like, for example, I'm a wage earner and I'm also self-employed, and I make estimated tax payments on my self-employment and sometimes on my W-2 income. Maybe I'm too lazy to change my withholding, but you do have estimated tax payments. It begs the question, is it a federal estimated tax payment or a state or both? And then of course, when did they make that estimated tax payment? Here's something we will talk about later on when we talk about the Schedule D. It's called the capital loss carryover. There's limitations, and those limitations mean from a previous year, i.e. tax year 2022, you might, let's say you have a capital loss of maybe $20,000. There's a limit to that. And so that capital loss carryover comes to 2023. And you can utilize that capital loss carryover until you exhaust it or you pass away. Once you die, the capital loss dies with you. And then the exchange, what is called in California, the Covered California program, and that's called the marketplace. You might have someone who moves from, I'll pick a state, let's say Iowa. And let's say Iowa is part of the federal exchange. So that would be the federal exchange, again, to purchase health insurance subsidized by the taxpayers. But again, in California, we know it as Covered California. And then page 3, this is administrative information, direct deposit. Some people have no problem with that. Some people don't want their monies to be deposited, or they don't want their tax to be debited from their account. So we ask about that. And then of course, it's very important that the taxpayer provides the account number and the routing number from the American Banking Association, ABA. And all of that then is used by the preparer to either direct deposit the refund or to direct debit if they owe monies. And there's a laundry list of other questions. And then we have demographic data. This is used for what is called the grant money and federal financial assistance. And if somebody doesn't want to answer it, then they don't want to answer it. But typically our taxpayers will answer yes, they speak English very well or well. And if they're a veteran, you want to capture that. But if they prefer not to answer, then, so be it. So you can see the demographic information that's asked of our VITA clients. And then this is something that you'll use time and time and time again, because when you conduct an interview, you're going to hear something and you say, okay, there's consequences to that, tax consequences, and you jot this down. And that'll help out not only you as a preparer, but also your quality reviewer, and then sometimes your electronic return originator. This is a document, it's called the Global Carry Forward. And if you go down here, it talks about the definition of global carry forward. So what that means is if the taxpayer signs this document at the bottom, they simply say, yes, tax slayer, you can share my information with any VITA site in the country. And so let's say they go from California and they move up to South Dakota, and they're in South Dakota next year, then that information is available to that South Dakota VITA volunteer. And again, it's called global carry forward. And all the data is secure. Some people may not feel that way. And if they don't feel that way, they don't have to agree to that. But if they do, they would sign at the very bottom that, yes, they agree to let that information essentially be carried forward to another year and any site associated with the VITA program. But again, you'll spend a lot of time on the 13614C, perfect it, go through it. And if someone says, I'm not sure of this, ask the follow-up questions. If you're not sure of a term, go to your site coordinator, and the term will be defined, and then that way you can help out your volunteer. Okay, so let's go to the first page. And again, you're going to spend a lot of time in your tax period, spend a lot of time on this. And again, if they're not sure, like some people don't know what tips are. I've met people and they go, what's a tip? And I said, well, that's something you give the coffee guy after he sells you a $9 cup of coffee and you give him a $2 tip. And that is considered a taxable event, and it's got to be reported on a tax return. But again, you just answer the question, because a lot of people, they're not in the tax world and they don't understand what an annuity is, or they do not understand what a pension is. I've met people who didn't understand the difference between the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board. So you don't laugh at them. You just, you just help them out and say, well, this is this and this is that. And then that way you're able to change your unsure to either a yes or a no. Okay, any questions about the 13614C that you'll look at every time you prepare a return?
Well, Jerry, a couple of people have been asking me if it's electronic or paper, and I put a copy of the electronic version into the chat for this video.
Yeah, and then what you're going to do is the taxpayer will be handed a paper 13614C, or maybe they've got one in Spanish or Mandarin, and they'll complete the paper return. They'll write it out with a pencil or a pen.
And for the St. Killian site, we go back to all our clients from last year and we mail them a copy of the form and the instructions. So a lot of them are going to come with this thing already filled out.
Yes, in fact, there's a team that does that. And who's on the call here who did that last year?
Adela.
Yeah, I've been doing it for the past several years. And then when it wasn't COVID, I have been able to have some people help me stuff the envelopes.
Oh yeah, that's right. We did that last year. That was a lot of fun. And
yeah,
so,
you came last year.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll use this for every single client. Okay, good. All right. So we're going to stop that. We're going to jump into our
Jerry, I did have one question about that form.
Okay.
And that was the PIN question. There's a question that asks if you've gotten a PIN. And then last year, there was another question further down that just asked about, did you receive a letter from the IRS? I don't know if that's still on there. And are those two the same?
Yeah, you're probably referring to the identity protection personal identification number.
Yes, but then further down, I think it was like question 6 on the next page, it says, have you ever received a letter from the IRS?
Yeah, and usually you're talking about that individual protection PIN. So what that means is IRS sends you a letter. You tell the IRS, I think my data has been compromised, or it has been compromised, and so then an IPPIN is provided. And the whole idea behind an IPPIN is you can still electronically file.
I think the letter he's talking about is in reference to a disallowed credit.
A disallowance?
I think the letter that he's mentioning is further on down in the 13614 is in reference to getting a letter about a disallowed credit.
Oh yeah, that happens. In fact, that's a good point. Your taxpayers are going to come to the VITA site with virtually any question you can think of, and there's certain things that we can help them out, and other things we can just kind of point the way and give them some guidance. If you've got someone who has a disallowance for whatever the case is, you can go to your site coordinator. You can kind of show them the way. But what you cannot do, what you do not want to do in the VITA program, you do not want to advocate for a client. You're out of your lane. As the comedian says, stay in your lane. Your lane is tax preparation. But again, you can show them the way if they have an issue with the Franchise Tax Board or the IRS. Okay, we've already shown you this, the 13615, that's a volunteer standards of conduct. That'll be all that information will be auto-populated once you certify. And just a couple things, if you're a CTEC member, there's changes to that designation on the form for tax year 2023. It's going to ask for your PTIN. And again, if you're a member of CTEC, that means you're a tax professional. And we have a lot of CTEC members in the VITA program, which simply means they're volunteering their time and their services for free as a VITA volunteer. You can still be a tax professional and be a VITA volunteer. You just don't want to troll for business at the VITA site. Okay, a couple other documents that you want to have familiarity with, the publication 525. In my VITA practice and in my professional practice, I use the 525 every season, multiple times. It's a good document. It talks about what's taxable, what's not taxable. And I have talked to tax attorneys, CPAs, enrolled agents, and sometimes they look at me and say, Jerry, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if it's taxable or not. So you just go look it up, and 525 is one publication that you can use. It's real helpful. Another publication, and we have a number of self-employed individuals, and self-employed individuals are going to use that Schedule C. It's the tax guide for small business. It's going to give information pertaining to income, expenses. It talks about record keeping. And although, again, we're not advocating for the client, if the client says, how long do I keep my stuff? You tell them, well, you know, there's a general rule that you keep your stuff for a certain period of time. And then if you're ever examined by the IRS, they're going to look at your documents, whether it's a hard copy or electronic, and they're going to also spend time verifying your income. So 334 does a great job. In my paying practice, I've got brand new clients and they've just started businesses, and they're very energetic. They got a great idea. They got a great product, a great service, and they know nothing about accounting and nothing about tax. And so what I'll usually do is say, you know, go and read some or all of the 334, and that's really going to help you out, and then we can have a conversation. Continuing education credits, practitioners. If you've been a practitioner before and you didn't get your continuing education credits, that could be a bad thing. I knew an enrolled agent one time who didn't get all of his continuing education credits, so he lost his enrolled agent status, which meant he had to sit for the test again, which was very time consuming, and he wasn't a happy person. Switching to the state of California, there's a number of documents to include the instructions to the Form 540, and that walks you through preparation of the Form 540. These documents are available on the Franchise Tax Board website. Okay, this is kind of a laundry list of things. I'll just point out a few things. The first one is the California Volunteer Reference Manual. That's for the Franchise Tax Board, your state return. That's updated every year. I try to find the 2023. I was unsuccessful, so that means it's probably being published. Sean, have you had an opportunity to see if that's been published?
Which one? The
FTB? Volunteer
FTB?
Reference Manual from the state.
I don't think that's out yet, but I haven't checked it this week.
Yeah, I checked a couple days ago, and I just saw the 2022 tax year. Okay. All right, so the next one, and this is something that I use in one of my classes, which is, actually I have a couple classes that are CTEC approved, and it's called the Franchise Tax Board Site Map. And we will actually spend a lot of time on this when we talk about California. This site map, which is publicly available, It is a comprehensive list of income items, deductions, non-refundable credits, refundable credits, and administrative matters for the state of California. And this is, I find it to be highly effective. And so that's where I go when I need to look up certain credits that I don't have a lot of familiarity with, because there's a lot of credits that California offers that we use in the VITA program. So again, that's a great reference right there. Let's see, for California, we do know that California has the requirement to either have health insurance or meet an exemption to the health insurance. And if not, then the client has to pay what is called the individual share responsibility payment on their California return. And so you do see that. Another document, this is both for VITA and for also if you're a practitioner, California has the concept of it's called conformity or non-conformity. And really that boils down to this. There's a federal tax law. Let's say, for example, federal government says you have to pay income tax on your unemployment compensation. Well, the state of California, they've got the Revenue and Taxation Code, and they say, no, on your California return, you don't have to pay income tax on your unemployment compensation. So that's an example where California does not conform to the federal government, which would be non-conformity. An area where California conforms would be, for example, let's say you've got W-2 wage income and you're working and living in Orange County, California, and you're working for a private company. You're going to pay income tax on your W-2 wages on your federal return, and you're going to pay income tax to the state of California on your state return. That would be an example of conformity. And so the publication 1001, it has a laundry list of items where California is either conforming or not conforming to the federal government. And there's also a concept called partial conformity. So you will use some of this this document for VITA purposes. So you want to be familiar with that. That's going to be helpful. And then kind of digging down a little bit more, you probably won't see a lot of this. The Franchise Tax Board, I have dealt with their website many, many times. I've dealt with their employees many, many times. And they're actually pretty good for what they do. They have a tax news that they publish every month. And I know that sounds kind of geeky, but when things change, you got to know about it. So you can dig into their tax news and you can look at their newsletter every month or something. And then this manual, this residency and sourcing technical manual, you probably won't use that very often. But sometimes you got someone who says, yeah, I'm a California resident. And then you start asking them questions and you realize, wait a second, maybe you're not. And so this manual talks a lot about residency and other matters. It's really geared toward Franchise Tax Board employees conducting audits. But again, it has information that may pertain to VITA. I've gone through it, and it's a pretty good document. And if you're a tax professional, this is a treasure trove of information for California returns. And then another document publicly available, I forget who, I think she's an attorney or a CPA, and she works for Kiplinger. It's a magazine, and they have tax law changes, and they do this every year. They do the laundry list of all the various changes. And this is extremely well written by this, again, I think she's a CPA or an attorney, and she does a really good job talking about these tax law changes. And so that's the URL that you can jump in there and you can see that. Any questions about this this particular slide? You know, I'll throw this out, Sean. I don't know if you remember. I just have a vague memory. I think California also has a VITA telephone number that you can call and get a hold of a state employee and ask them VITA questions.
I don't remember that. I know there's the VITA hotlines.
Yeah, the feds have one, but I think California does.
I think the California one might not be open on the weekends, but
oh, yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. All right. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And so you're not going to become an expert at this because a lot of this stuff is already built into the software, but you want to be familiar with it. And so if you're a tax geek, and I don't know if I'm a tax geek, probably, there's an IRS revenue procedure that's published every year that talks about the changes, what is called inflation adjusted changes for the new tax year. And that's at revenue procedure 2022-38. There's the URL. So here's a highlight of some of the changes. Standard deductions typically change. And we know the general rule is you're going to take the greater of, there's exceptions to that. And so a lot of people in the VITA program or clients will take the standard deduction, and that's automatically populated based on their filing status. You do get an additional amount if you're blind, according to the tax definition, or if you're over 65 or older. And then a lot of people are concerned about paying tax. I guess I'm one of them. There's a thing called marginal tax rate. So for your VITA clients, and this is individual income tax. This is ordinary income rates, if you will. And so for a lot of our clients, they're at the 10% marginal rate, which is low, and then it goes up. And so a lot of people, they may be familiar with that 37% rate. Our VITA clients don't pay it. And that's actually a marginal tax rate, which means you're taxed on chunks of income. And then you will occasionally bump into a VITA client who only has income from the sale of stock. And when you're talking about the sale of stock, of course, the software will differentiate between short and long-term sales. And short-term sales, you're talking about ordinary income rates. Long-term sales, which is over a year, you're talking about preferential rates, long-term tax rates. And in some cases, I think I shared this story before, I was sitting at a desk with two certified public accountants, and we were looking at a VITA return, and we were scratching our head. And this woman had like $25,000 or $28,000 of capital gains, and her tax was 0%. And I'm thinking, oh, wait a second, that's right. It's long-term capital rates. And the two CPAs looked at me, yeah, we understand that concept. I said, yeah, guys, there's no other income here. It's just long-term. And in this particular case, for her amount of income, the tax rate for her is 0%. And so you will occasionally see that from time to time. When you hear the term capital, long-term capital rates or long-term capital gains rates, it's a different amount that's assessed against the taxpayer as opposed to ordinary rates, i.e. W-2 income. EITC, we have both federal and state. The federal EITC, the maximum is 7430. Some people think, well, I'm going to get the maximum. Well, no, you're not. You have to qualify for the maximum, which means you got to have 3 or more qualifying children. Your income has to be a certain amount, and then you can get the maximum amount. And then there's also a California earned income tax credit. And so for our low income taxpayers who maximize this credit, their federal and state EITC is going to be about $10,000. And you're thinking, wow. And yeah, we do have people walk out the door and they're going to get a refund of well over $10,000. They've got the EITC plus they have their federal tax withholding you're going to get back in its entirety. All right, and then a couple other things, your mileage rates, and thankfully you don't have to memorize this, but you want to have familiarity for business, and this is going to apply to your Schedule C folks. Now for every business mile they drive, they're going to get that 65.5 cents. In the VITA program, we don't do the actual expense method. We're not trained to do that. It's just the standard mileage rate. And when you plug the miles that they drove for business, your software is going to automatically compute that expense. Medical and moving is 22 cents a mile. There's a change there. Moving is only for military, active military personnel. Let's see, charity. Charity hasn't changed for a long time. Like I drive for a charity, and when I drive and I'm not reimbursed, then of course I can get that 14 cents a mile on my Schedule A. And that's another thing. A lot of times people will incur expenses and they're reimbursed for those expenses. If they're reimbursed, they cannot take a tax deduction if they're reimbursed in full. So for moving, if you do any, well, of course, military, you probably won't do, But if you did a military move, it would beg the question, and you would ask the individual, how much did you receive in reimbursement? And if they're fully reimbursed, they don't have any moving expenses they can deduct. The 1099-K, we're going to talk about this in a later session, but this is what I'd like you to know right now. A 1099-K is an information return. There are many different types of information returns. And the 1099-K is issued for people who, you might have a Lyft driver, or you might have a, what's the other program?
Uber.
Thank you. Uber. I guess Uber is the big one. Or you might have someone who's selling something on some type of social platform. And what that means is the changes were significant. They're going to be applied in tax year 2023, and that threshold is $600. And so what that means is if someone's been on a social platform, they've been selling stuff, they may be issued a 1099-K by the entity, and they're required to get it if they receive more than or $600 or more. Now, let's say you've had income of $400 and you don't get a 1099-K. Then you got to go back to the rule. Everything's going to be included in gross income unless otherwise excluded. And we'll show you that in a moment. We are running out of time here, Scott, so I'm just going to touch upon this real quick. We've talked about the volunteer standards of conduct. The golden rule is you treat people the way you want to be treated. And typically you're not going to have that issue. Most people are appreciative when they come to the site. Your scope of service, this is what we do and what we don't do. And so if it's out of scope, it's out of scope. We can't help them. And that's pages, I think that's Roman numeral VI, which is 6, to XXI, which is 21. And that talks about your scope of service or things that we cannot assist with. And then when you're preparing a return, just like me, you're going to get a lot of extra information or extra noise, which doesn't apply. And so you still want to listen to the person, but you're capturing data that has tax consequences. And if someone says, I've got a purple house, okay, you got a purple house. And you may laugh and giggle about it, but there's no tax consequences to painting your house purple. We talked about virtual currency. It's discussed in the 4012. Again, if you buy it, we'll help you. If you sell it, it's out of scope. And then the 13614, we've talked about that. And it's okay to tell someone, hey, we can't help you today. We need all these documents. You haven't brought them in with you. And in some cases, you say, we can't help you, period, because it's out of scope. And that's okay. Again, you want to do it in a, I call it a Care Bear fashion. So that way they feel good about coming to the site, and you show them the path to get help. Taxpayer management, this is really up to everybody, but the site coordinator is kind of the conductor, if you will. And so what it is you want to make sure they're attended to. If they seem like a lost pup, then you want to go up to them and engage them in a good way. And because sometimes they're frustrated and they need some explanation about waiting times and things like that. You will see this at the VITA site. It's the virtual form 14446, which means they're going to drop off their documents. They're going to complete that form. They'll come back the next week and they'll pick up their tax return. And that's the drop-off method. And there are other return preparation models, but usually we use the face-to-face and then the virtual. I don't expect anybody to use the Lisio platform. I threw that in there. I use that for VITA a couple of years ago. I use it in my practice. That is a secure document platform. And in my practice, I think I pay $50 a month for that. TaxSlayer also has a program where you can upload documents. And Sean, I'm going to leave that to you for additional training.
Okay.
Let's see. We talked about all this stuff. Your Link and Learn, you got to create an account. Those are all of the various certifications, to include the phone call to get the individual who speaks a foreign language. And I don't expect St. Killian's to do military, international, or foreign student certification. Foreign student certification is probably the most lengthy one. But if you bump into an international student, they just love the fact you can help them out. But keep in mind, if you do certify at one of these other levels, you got to have 2 people at the site, because you have tax preparation, And then you also have quality review. We'll talk a little bit more about this quick introduction. We're going to talk about filing basics, and that would be the filing statuses. We're going to talk about who has to file, who should file, amended returns. Sean, I'm not sure how you're going to do it. At my site, we do amended returns at the end of the season. But again, they can be completed if you're certified at the advanced level, and they can be filed electronically. We'll talk about all the filing statuses in great detail next week. For California, the takeaways here, most people who have health insurance and they're low income, they're in covered California or Medi-Cal. But if they're in covered California, they've entered into the website, they've entered their documents or their information, and they're receiving subsidized health insurance. And so non-negotiable, if they're in covered California, they have to bring that 1095 alpha, the health insurance marketplace statement, to the VITA site. This is something you see from time to time, and it knocks their socks off. Someone's in covered California and something's changed in their life. Maybe they got a huge pay increase and they didn't go back to covered California to make changes which would reduce their taxpayer subsidy. And then at the end of the year, they've got to repay that. That's called the excess advance premium tax credit repayment. And I've seen that up close and personal on a couple taxpayers, and it just rocks their world, which means they got to make a payment back because they received too much of a subsidy. You will see that. Now, if they receive too little of a subsidy, that's when they get an additional credit, which is a net premium tax credit. And we'll talk about this in great detail when we do California. This is, and again, we'll talk about dependents in great detail, but the bottom line is there's no dollar amount associated with dependents. It's all associated with credits now because of the TCJA, which is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, get away with that exemption amount. So if you've been around for a while, you probably had that years ago. It doesn't exist now. We just have credits associated with the dependent. This is just an example of information returns, and this is a partial list. There are many different types of forms. I bump into a form every year I've never seen, but these are typically the information returns we're going to see. We secure this from the taxpayer along with that intake and interview sheet, along with the interview. And then a lot of people get twisted and turned. They don't have an information return, but they determine that they had income. I tell them, well, I put my tax hat on, and what that means is everything's included in gross income unless it's excluded. So an example of an exclusion would be a bona fide gift. That's excluded. But your W-2 wages, this is the general rule. There's actually an exception to it. Your W-2 wages are reported on your tax return. Now, of course, we want these information returns, and typically they'll bring them to the site. Just real quick, the ITIN, we help out taxpayers. These are undocumented taxpayers, which means they're living and working in the United States. They haven't gone through immigration. They meet what is called the substantial presence test, which means we're going to help them out. We're going to help them out with their tax return, but they have to have an ITIN, and you apply to the IRS for an ITIN. We talked about the IPPIN. That is something that the IRS is going to send you a document, which means we can electronically file your return with that IPPIN. Something we will mention a couple, 2 or 3 times. Some people get twisted and turned when they say, well, I didn't get the income this year, I got it last year. We deal with cash method accounting, if you will, which means when you receive the income, you're going to report it on your tax return, your Form 1040. When you hear the term constructive receipt of income, an example of that would be a dividend reinvestment plan. So for example, I have stock in Caterpillar. When I signed up, they go, okay, where do you want your dividends checks sent? I said, I don't want you to send me dividend checks. I want you to take it and reinvest and buy more stock. That's called the dividend reinvestment plan, which means for tax purposes, I have constructive receipt of income in the year that it was paid out, which means I got to report on my tax return, and I'm going to get a 1099 DIV, one of those information returns. And then you hear the term assignment of income doctrine. I actually saw this at a VITA site one time. One of our preparer was taking all of the income from the kids, I think 2 or 3 kids, and dumping it on mom's return. And I said, no, you can't do that. That violates the assignment of income doctrine. So what you do is you're going to report your income on your return. There's an exception to that. It's called the kiddie tax rule, which we talk about. But again, you don't combine W-2 income and Social Security income and put it all in mom or dad's return. That doesn't work. We're not going to do this, Scott. We did one earlier, but what I'll do, this is the one we'll tackle next week. The first one we'll do, but we'll do other returns next week. So hopefully you have a copy of this. Try to prepare a return. If not, we'll walk through this one. This is a basic return. Bill Franca, he's got some W-2 income. He's got some interest income. And then he had a grand plan to become a real estate agent. And if you don't know the rules there, we'll talk about those rules for education. Okay, and then real quick, let me go to this one. Our next session is going to be next Saturday from 9 to 1. We'll tackle the Bill Franca return, and we will also discuss the Schedule A itemized deductions, the Schedule C sole proprietor, the Schedule D, which also includes the capital gains and losses and capital gains distributions. Scott, that's it. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, it's Sean. Scott's the other guy.
Oh, Sean, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. I know. It's Scott. It's because your name's right under his picture. So just a reminder to everybody, the slide in your face right now says keep reading your Pub 4012. Those books have not yet arrived. They will probably arrive in the next week or two, but we did send out a link to the electronic version of that document. I'm going to send an email as soon as this meeting's over to everybody who was signed up, and we'll attach all the different forms that we've loaded into the chat. So if you didn't happen to grab them during the meeting, don't worry. We'll send you out a copy of the 4012, the 6744, and the intake interview form. And I guess that is it. It's almost 1 o'clock. I actually have another job to go to at 1:30. So I'm going to upload this to the church. They're going to put it on their YouTube site. As soon as it's on the YouTube, they'll let me know. And when I get done with my other job at 10 o'clock tonight, I'll send out a link to everybody so you can watch the video on YouTube. It will pop up sometime this afternoon, but I'm going to be busy until 10 o'clock.
Hey, Sean, one more comment. If you're a new volunteer and you seem to be overwhelmed by all this information, by the end of this experience in December, you're going to have an opportunity to work with the software. You're going to know these terms because we're going to repeat a lot of this. So you're going to be in good hands by the end of the training.
Oh, yeah. And for people who are getting like feeling like it's just coming at them like a fire hose and there's so much and I can't get it all done, just realize the software is not even ready to log into yet. It's still last year's version. It's probably going to be the week of Thanksgiving before that's ready to go. And nobody needs to be certified anything until January. So there's not a rush. We're just trying to get ahead of things here.
Okay, that's great. That's great. It's a new one. We need it. We need the time.
Okay.
But we will go through publication 401 too. We will do our part.
All right. Thank you.
Do we have anything specific that we need to accomplish before next Saturday?
The only thing I would like the volunteers to do, whether you're new or returning, see if you can review that Franca return. Again, let me go back to that. This is Bill Franca. If you're able to log into the software for tax year, actually it says 2023 here, but again, the 2023 is not available. So do the 2022 and see if you can prepare a return. But we'll go through this in detail next week when we first get started.
Okay, that's great.
All right.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Weekend.
Sherry.
Okay,
you.
see you next week.
See you next week.
Great job.
Thank you, guys.